Chapter 643. Late at night in Star Lake Castle, Thales sat alone on the observation deck on the top floor of Jackal Tower, looking down at Star Lake in the distance. King Kessel and Captain Adrian returned to the capital that very night, leaving only Sonia and her Starlight guards behind. They caused a huge ruckus in the main castle's banquet hall, and only calmed down at dawn. Mallows and Granny Valencia were in a terrible fix. As for the Duke of Star Lake, he had already returned to his bedroom with the excuse of being drunk. *T. I clearly saw him drinking juice. The fortress flower, who was drunkenly tugging at Mallow's collar. But only Thales knew that, compared to welcoming the king's visit, he would rather be drunk and unable to get up. A cat's meow came from the eaves in the distance, and the dog's barks on the ground responded to it. Coupled with the indistinct chirping of cicadas, Star Lake Castle under the moonlight was filled with a sense of wildness and contentment. Why? Thales stared at the sparkling waves on Star Lake, lost in thought. Why now? Why Zane? Why South Coast Hill? Thales lowered his head and pulled out a dagger wrapped in heavy bandages from its sheath. After he escaped from the Great Desert, due to various reasons, he did not remove it. Instead, he strengthened the disguise on the JC's dagger to ensure that its origins would not be revealed. More importantly, why him? Thales casually took out the bone ring Gertoxa, and hung the dagger's tip on it. The ferocious bone ring and the sharp blade complemented each other, making it look even more desolate under the moonlight. What does Kessel V want him to do? Why is the king so confident and so lax? Where will Renaissance Palace start? How will they deal with the aftermath so that they can ensure the results without causing trouble? What is his role? What should he do? What can he do? Countless questions and doubts filled Thales' mind at the same time. There was light moving on the rapid shadow tower not far away. Thales knew that it was the patrolling sentry changing shifts. Looking at the figures, it might be Vanguard's Supo Langley leading a team of local Jade Star private soldiers. The prince skillfully jumped off the observation deck and hid his body, waiting for the change to end. The patrolling sentry was more concerned about the threat outside the castle, but if one of them turned around in the middle of the night and saw the Duke of Star Lake's head, it would not be pleasant. Thales leaned against the wall, and his gaze froze. Well, at least he knew one thing. That was, he had to obey the king's orders, go to the Emerald City, and participate in this uncertain political conspiracy in any way. It was not only because he was bound by the oath, not only because he had a personal grudge against Zayn, not only because it was necessary. It was also because it was his choice, his right, and his bargaining chip. After the painful lessons such as Dragon's Blood and Sand King, he had risked his future and his life to win the tiny bit of freedom from the Iron Hand King's fingers. This freedom may not be much, but it is vital. Just like in the past, Thales knew nothing about Renaissance Palace's plans, tactics, process, and details against Zayn. He was excluded and could only act according to the circumstances. But unlike in the past, at this time, Thales received a clear order and was informed of the answer beforehand. He was even acknowledged as an independent, third-party chess piece. He was no longer blindly swayed in the kingdom's chess game. Moreover, as long as I complete it, I don't care what you do. Thales flicked the dagger in his hand. The bone ring, Covenant, flipped into the air and was caught by him. And now, what he wanted to do, what he could do. No, sir. I'm talking about Lady Cicere. Lady Cicere, this won't do. This won't do. Really, I can't. An embarrassed and flustered male voice came faintly from the bottom of the observation deck. Thales, who was practicing his craft, had a change of expression. Oh, I understand. So, you don't like me? What followed was a valiant and imposing female voice. Her tone was aggressive. What? Thales gulped and entered Hell's senses. No, how would I dare? You are very powerful, very elegant, very charming, but I belong to the royal guards. The man became more and more flustered. Thales held his breath and crept up to the other side of the lookout. He carefully peeked half of his head out and looked down. Diagonally across from him, 2 floors below him, Zombie Glover was leaning against the lookout in a disheveled and stiff manner. Behind him was the sky. And Sonia Cecere, the famous fortress belle, stood in front of him in a drunken manner. She pressed down on his shoulder with one hand, and she almost forced Glover out of the lookout. So, you mean that I'm not good enough for you royal guards? Sonia leaned forward, and there was a hint of coldness in her misty eyes. Glover shuddered a little. No, sir. I mean, I have a duty to fulfill. I still have to protect His Highness. Don't worry about that. I can guarantee that Prince Thales will not have any objections. He might even help me, as long as you are willing. Sonia shook her head and revealed an evil smile. Thales furrowed his eyebrows tightly. Glover's expression was stiff, and he shook his head vigorously. When she saw that the man would rather die than submit, Sonia, whose eyes were misty, was silent for a while. Then, she understood something. She patted Glover's chest rhythmically. Aha, I understand now. You think that you are not good enough. Hee hee. You lack experience in all aspects? Glover's face turned red. No. He denied it at first, but he immediately realized that this was a breakthrough, so he quickly admitted, I mean, yes, Sir Cecere, about that, I can't do it. I have never. My experience in this area is still shallow. Even if I will definitely not be able to take it, and I won't be able to last long. But Sonia took a step forward, and her entire body was almost on Glover's body. She patted his shoulders with both hands. Don't worry, I will teach you. The fortress flower's eyes shone, and the curve of her lips became wider. Her tone also became stranger. And I will start from the beginning. I will demonstrate it myself, and I will teach you step by step. I will teach you step by step. Oh, Thales, who was eavesdropping from above, changed his expression several times. Is this what I should be listening to? Glover could not take it anymore. He pushed Sonia away abruptly, turned around, and struggled free. No, we can't do this. My lady, sir, this is against the rules. By the way, I still have a duty to be on duty tonight. Why don't we talk next time? But before he could take 2 steps, the fortress flower pressed her arm against the wall and blocked his way. But I want you. I really, really want you desperately. I want you now. Glover gulped, and his breathing quickened. Sonia, who reeked of alcohol, had a misty look in her eyes. She swayed and approached Glover. I know that you actually want me too, don't you? And I happen to be the commander of Broken Dragon Fortress, and I have the heavy responsibility of protecting the country. This means that it's not just me, but the entire kingdom wants you. The fortress flower had a smile that allowed no resistance. She forced Glover into a corner step by step. The latter's face, which had never changed in 10,000 years, was now filled with endless fear. Are you really not going to reconsider? What the **CK Thales, who was eavesdropping on everything, rubbed his face. What the **CK is going on? With complicated feelings, the prince crouched down below the watchtower. He made sure that they could not see him, then forced the sin of Hell's River to surge up his throat and mouth, extremely unwillingly, and adjusted the frequency. A few seconds later, he pinched his nose, took a deep breath, and opened his mouth to speak. Meow, meow, the sound penetrated the obstruction and reverberated, as if it was right beside their ears. The fortress flower and Glover were shocked. The two of them separated abruptly and looked around. Meow. Thales continued to imitate a certain black cat who dared to speak harshly to Grandma Valencia. He vividly dragged out his voice and pretended to be a cat who was sleeping soundly and objected to being disturbed by humans. Glover finally got rid of his fear. When he thought of something, he immediately put on a stern expression. "Ah, it's that damn black cat. It must have gone to the Duke's room to steal food and look at the confidential documents again. This is an urgent situation. It's very, very dangerous. I must go and protect Duke Thale's room." Sonia seemed to have sobered up a little. She stared at him in disbelief. Glover coughed and tidied up his clothes. Chief Sisir, Your Grace, I am very grateful for your favor, but, no, sorry, I can't. I have to go on duty. If you need, I can recommend other brothers in the guards to replace me. For example, there's a good young man in the defense division." The fortress flower narrowed her eyes. She was obviously extremely displeased. Glover did not even dare to breathe too loudly. Meow. A third meow came from above his head. Each meow was more urgent than the last. Finally, Sonia heaved a long sigh. "Hey, forget it. A forceful melon will not be sweet." The zombie breathed a sigh of relief. "Don't worry, we." Sonia patted Glover's chest and curled up the corners of her mouth. She blinked meaningfully. There's still a long way to go. Glover's face was pale. He turned around and rushed to the corridor as if he was fleeing for his life. He rushed down the stairs without looking back. What a pity. Sonia sized up his disheveled back. She was obviously rather regretful. TSK. What a good lad. Very good. Mission accomplished. Thales was very satisfied with the way he handled the situation. He did not offend the fortress flower and successfully rescued his subordinates. Even the gloom of the king's visit was reduced by a lot. Based on his past experience, Thales pinched his nose and meowed a few more times to wrap things up and confuse the cat so that it would not look too strange. What I need to do now is to sneak away. In the next second, Thales turned around and met a pair of glowing green eyes. He was stunned. It's a black cat. It stood elegantly and proudly on the lookout. It looked suspiciously at the Duke of Star Lake, who pinched his nose and curled up into a ball in the corner. Why does this cat look a little familiar? Thales was extremely embarrassed. In order not to expose himself, he could only continue to pinch his nose and meow at it in a friendly manner. Meow. The black cat blinked and came to a sudden realization. It blew at its whiskers and showed him a contemptuous expression. It then took elegant and disdainful steps and left while wagging its tail. Thales' face darkened as he stared at the cat's proud butt. What's wrong? Have you never seen a prince meow like a cat? Damned cat that steals food. When he thought of this, the indignant Thales pinched his nose and roared at the black cat in protest. Meow. Wah. The black cat ignored him. It just wagged its tail and disappeared around the corner with graceful catwalk. TSK, damned cat. Thales cursed silently. But in the next second, the light on the lookout dimmed, as if something had blocked the moonlight. The Duke of Star Lake was stunned. He raised his head stiffly. Under the moonlight, Sonia Sisir had at some point crossed the height of the 3-story building and was crouching on the lookout above Thales' head. She looked down at him in a daze, the Duke of Star Lake who was curled up in the corner, pinching his nose and gritting his teeth. A breeze blew. The two of them, one high and one low, one up and one down, stared at each other in silence. Thales swore to Dark Knight that at that moment, he just wanted to jump off the tower and end this once and for all. After an unknown amount of time, Sonia tilted her head and narrowed her eyes. Hey. The teenager shuddered. He then loosened his nose and chuckled. What a coincidence. Hee hee, Sonia, you can't fall asleep either. Sonia did not speak, but her gaze became more complicated. Aha, the scenery here is pretty good, isn't it? Sonia still did not answer, but her frown deepened. All right. Thales exhaled in pain. He stood up and gave up on the idea of bluffing his way out of this. I'm very sorry, but Glover said that he's not willing to. Sonia snorted through her nose and landed next to Thales. She sat against the wall and muttered indignantly, I'm very sorry. That's because he hasn't tried. The fortress flower took out a pouch of tobacco and a piece of paper from her bosom. She swiftly rolled the cigarette. Thank God, she did not ask about the cat meowing. All right, even if you're right. Thales tried hard to forget the awkwardness from just now. But we still need him to agree to try. He'll agree very soon. He doesn't know what I can give him. It's something he'll never forget for the rest of his life. Sonia put the rolled cigarette into her mouth and pouted. Her tone was rather indignant. Are we really going to discuss this topic here? Sensing that the topic was becoming more and more unbearable, Thales had no choice but to cut her off with a bitter expression. All right, it's not very appropriate to talk about it in front of you. With the cigarette in her mouth, Sonia took out a crystal drop flint and tried hard to start a fire. But in your position, you'll have to experience this sooner or later. Stop. Thales cut off the topic and turned around with a bitter expression. Why did I have to say this to her here? I still have a lot of things to do. Right. A voice rang in the bottom of his heart. A lot of things to do. Including the legendary anti-mystic equipment. Thales stopped in his tracks. He turned around to look at Sonia. The scene of her holding the shield, subduing Giza on the ground, and watching the latter turn into ashes appeared in his mind. Maybe this is a breakthrough. I can get some information. But the voice in his heart reminded him sternly. Be careful. Don't forget what Asda said. If the Magic Empress knows or even notices that you're looking for the secret of the legendary anti-mystic equipment, Thales clenched his fists. He had to be cautious, natural, smooth, and indirect. He had to ask her about the legendary anti-mystic equipment without leaving a trace or arousing suspicion. You didn't bring that shield. The fortress flower tried hard to rub the flint. She did not manage to react. What? Oh, that thing. I returned it to Renaissance Palace. I'll go and get it back later. Thales furrowed his brows. All right, so the Supreme Shield isn't here. Then why did Asda hide in such a hurry? Sonia was still trying hard to light her cigarette. Her tone was nonchalant. You know, weapons need to be polished and maintained. Legendary anti-mystic equipment is even more delicate. Legendary anti-mystic equipment also needed maintenance, even more so than normal weapons. Thales nodded. He was about to ask more questions. Asterisk crack. Asterisk as the flame lit up, the fortress flower finally lit the cigarette in her mouth. She took a deep drag with an intoxicated look on her face. A few seconds later, she slowly exhaled. Thales had to wave his hands desperately to get rid of the smoke. Sonia cast a sideways glance at the prince. Want a puff? Thales, who had retreated due to the smoke, shook his head in a well-practiced manner. Children can't. Halfway through his sentence, Thales remembered the glorious history of the Empire's people coming of age at the age of 14. He reluctantly changed his words, based on what I know, it's not good for the throat and lungs. If you smoke too much, it will affect your breathing, and if you smoke too much, it will affect your lifespan. Affect, breathing and lifespan. The fortress flower smiled in a daze. Child, do you know what's the most lethal weapon on the battlefield? Mystic gun. Nah. The fortress flower held the cigarette and looked up at the sky. The drunkenness in her eyes lessened a little. It's not a knife or a sword, but a hammer and a pike. Especially when thousands of people are squeezed together and fighting with their lives on the line. Whether you breathe more or less, there's not much of a difference whether you live to 80 or 50 years old. Thales recalled the battle to break out of the encirclement under the fortress. He recalled the roars of battle that filled the sky and the severed limbs all over the ground. He could not help but frown. He chased away the smoke even faster. And when a spear pierces into your chest with a swish like this. Sonia turned her head around and swiftly poked Thales' chest with 2 fingers. There's no difference between a healthy lung and a pitch-black lung. F***ck. The pain in his chest made Thales grimace. He had to move back a little to avoid more physical contact with her. The fortress flower looked at him and chuckled. But if a cheap puff of smoke like this. Sonia took a deep breath and fixed her gaze on the distant lake of stars, can make hundreds and thousands of soldiers forget their fear, pain, despair, and death. It can increase their morale and unity while they talk trash, and reduce the possibility of a camp explosion and collapse. Sonia looked at Thales and exhaled a thick puff of smoke in a leisurely manner. Then, perhaps we can win a battle and defend a fortress. Cough. 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 Thales choked and coughed continuously. Thank you, I'll remember this. The prince covered his nose in pain. Don't smoke if you're not fighting. Sonia burst into hearty laughter. The smoke lingered in the air. Both of them, who had their own thoughts on their minds, quietened down. The castle watchtower was silent at night. Not enough. Thales reminded himself that he needed a better point of entry. He needed to know more. Speaking of battles and lifespan, how long have you been fighting with that shield? Sonia put down her cigarette and stared straight at him. She stared at him so intensely that Thales immediately tried to salvage the situation. I heard that legendary anti-mystic equipment will shorten the lifespan of its user. I remember that you used it quite a lot to save me. The fortress flower looked at him for a long time and snorted. There is such a saying. Sonia shook her head. But don't worry, the thing in my hand doesn't like me. It refuses to cooperate with me and release its power, so it can't hurt me. Oh, then I'm relieved. What? Thales turned around in shock. It doesn't like you. Yes, I'm also puzzled, right? Sonia took a puff of her cigarette. She was filled with indignation. What's wrong with this world? Even a broken shield has the right to say that it doesn't like me. No, that's not the point. The point is, I mean, it's alive. Thales said in surprise. You can say that, but not entirely. It can't speak, but I can feel it. How should I put it? Emotions. Sonia picked her ears. It said that they are only telepathically connected to a few masters, and only then can they unleash their greatest effect. Of course, it said that the greater the effect, the greater the price. Telepathically connected, greatest effect. Thales furrowed his brows and recalled the blade of purification from a long time ago, the small red sword with a great background. Just like that broken shield in my hand. Sonia snorted coldly and continued. It's always so reluctant, and it really thinks of itself as a master. In the end, I can't be bothered with it anymore. It's not even as useful as the long-handled broadsword I seized outside. Thales fell into deep thought after he heard that. But, there must be a reason why you were given the supreme shield. The kingdom must think highly of you, he said carefully. It's not that. Sonia waved her hand, and the smoke thickened. During the bloody year, its master died, and most of the supreme class elites who were suitable for it were killed. They had no choice. At that time, I was about to head north to fight, so I took it on without knowing it. When I first got it, that broken shield was black and rough. I raised a hammer and smashed it for half a night before I was sure that it wasn't a fake. No wonder the Supreme Shield doesn't like you. Thales was silent for a while. In the end, he could not help but ask. Then, do you remember who its previous master was? Sonia rubbed her nose. Baron Quinton told me before. I don't really remember his name, but I heard that he was a royal guard when he was alive. He was quite a high-ranking official. A royal guard when he was alive. Thales stopped talking. Right, don't tell anyone else. Sonia narrowed her eyes. The Black Prophet specifically reminded me that the legendary anti-mystic equipment is a secret of the kingdom. It's very important and sensitive. If anyone asks about it, remember to tell him immediately. Thales felt a chill in his heart. *CK, I knew it. The prince remained calm. No wonder he wasn't willing to tell me anything. The fortress flower laughed. Believe me, you're not the first. You'll get used to it. So, everything is fine in the north. Thales changed the topic to avoid suspicion. Broken Dragon Fortress, the border, Lampard. When it came to her old profession, Sonia hummed in acknowledgement and stood up. She leaned on the watchtower and scrutinized everything in Star Lake Castle. It was as if she was unwilling to let go of a single blade of grass and tree. She even wanted to scrutinize the cat on the roof. Thanks to you, child, whether it's Black Sand region or Prestige Orchid region, the Northland barbarians have been busy fighting their own people and have become more obedient. Besides, it's almost the busy farming season. The fields, farms, towns, workshops, and markets are all short of manpower. Not to mention fighting, even the bandits who cross the border to rob are not free. Thanks to him. This sentence brought Thales back to 6 years ago, to the days when he walked out of Broken Dragon Fortress and headed to the north. The vampires, the blood mystic, the heavy encirclement of the Black Sand region army, the game between him and Lampard under the fortress. The scenes of the past appeared before his eyes, and they were incredibly clear. Thales stared at Sonia, and there was a hint of friendliness in his eyes. Of course, it'll be hard to say in a few days. The fortress flower held a cigarette in her mouth and snorted softly. So, I seized this period of time to go back to my hometown and enjoy my vacation. Thales was moved when he heard this. Go back to your hometown. You're a local. Sonia shifted her attention away from an old tree in the distance. Of course. When my parents were alive, they were farmers in a nearby farm. Here, it's in that direction. Just go over 2 mountains. Sonia pointed in the direction for Thales with great enthusiasm. And when I reached the age where I could wield a pitchfork, I came to be recruited and became a guard here. Sonia, the famous fortress flower, was the daughter of a peasant family. Thales thought for a while and came to a realization. I know that you are Duke John's former subordinate. So, did you start as a guard in Starlake Castle? Sonia flicked the ash off her cigarette and stared at the main fortress of Star Lake Castle with a profound gaze. There. Under the moonlight, Sonia pointed down. There used to be 3 trees there. I used to rest there when my shift changed. Thales looked in the direction of her finger. It was a field that Mother Valencia had instructed people to cultivate. The teenager's heart skipped a beat. Trees, and that used to be a part of the garden. Sonia's voice was a little ethereal. John liked to take a walk there alone and meditate, rain or shine. He said that it helped him think. Thales stared at that place. It was now fenced off, and many dogs were kept there. Garden, Thales subconsciously clenched his fists. Sonia, it's not just your castle, child. Sonia stared at the location of Rapid Shadow Tower. Her expression was absent-minded. She spoke in a drawn-out tone. Once, many people treated this place as their home. For many, many years. Home. Home. Thales was silent for a long time. When he turned around and looked at the field again, he had a different feeling. I'm very sorry. He suddenly did not want to ask her about the Supreme Shield anymore. There will be a chance, he told himself. Not now. It shouldn't be. Sonia was silent for a while. Her cigarette flickered. No, thank you. Sonia shook her head and dispelled the gloominess. She turned back into the cheerful fortress flower. Every year, I would come back to rest for a few days. I would scrounge a meal at old Cordero's manor, cause some trouble, and get into fights. But this year, since you have repaired the castle, in the next second, Sonia revealed a smug smile. Then I don't have to look at old Cordero's face anymore. Ever since I beat his son to tears after my mother rejected his proposal of marriage when I was 5 years old, he has always had a grudge against me. You really don't want to have a taste? Thales stared at the cigarette Sonia extended to him. He smiled and shook his head. Then, welcome home. Thales tried hard to recover from the sadness he felt just now. You and your people can stay as long as you want. Food and lodging are all covered. All covered. The fortress flower had a look of disbelief. Today, I happened to hear an old guard talking sarcastically about how comfortable it is for us to live and eat for free. You should be talking about the second logistics officer, Durward Stone. Thales seemed to have remembered something, and a troubled expression appeared on his face. And I can guarantee that you definitely did not, accidentally, hear it. That rotten old man is very bad. But soon, his eyes brightened. But it doesn't matter. I believe that I can repay my father for hosting the kingdom's famous martial and meritorious war hero, Lady Sonia Cecere. No, I must repay him. Otherwise, Thales swore that he would lie in Ballard Room and not get up during the next imperial conference. Sonia exhaled a mouthful of smoke and snorted. His Majesty has gone back. Yes, Thales felt that something was wrong the moment the words left his mouth. He frowned and looked at her. The fortress flower grinned. Child, in any case, I fought a war. Unfortunately, I am also a commander. If I didn't even know who was in the marching troops, Broken Dragon Fortress would have been overturned 1,000 times. As expected. She also knew about the king's visit. The way Thales looked at her changed. It lost the lightness from before and became a little more solemn. Did she really just return to her hometown to enjoy a holiday? Was this planned? The royal guards escorted the king here in the name of sending the kingdom's famous marshal back to his hometown. Was this King Kessel's idea? Or did he let it happen? What does this mean? Is he trying to hint at me? What does Sonia's appearance here mean? A myriad of thoughts surged in his mind. At this moment, Thales suddenly lost interest in talking to Sonia. The days they ate and lived together in the fortress 6 years ago seemed to no longer be clear. Only the bone ring, the covenant, in his pocket became heavier. Sonia seemed to sense something. She glanced at Thales. If it's convenient for me to reveal, why did His Majesty look for you? The fortress flower asked casually. The cigarette in her hand was mostly burnt and was gradually dimming. She did not seem to know. Or was she just pretending not to know? Sonia Cecere, she is indeed the benefactor who saved you 6 years ago, but don't forget, a voice rose from the bottom of his heart and carefully reminded Thales, she is also one of the 3 marshals of the kingdom, and the person in charge of the regular army of the kingdom. She is the king's sword. Thales gulped. What did the king say to Sonia? What did he instruct her to do? How will it affect me? What should I say, and what should I not say? I am going to meet the candidate for my fiancé. I am going to destroy the Guardian Duke of South Coast. What should I say? Business trip. Thale's expression did not change. His gaze pierced through the smoke. I have to go out and do something. Business trip. I guess you won't be heading north to revisit Broken Dragon Fortress. Thales hesitated for a moment. Don't worry, don't be nervous. I am not interested in what you are going to do. Sonia smiled relaxedly, as if she had seen through Thale's thoughts. She fiercely inhaled the last puff of the cigarette before reluctantly throwing the butt away. Anyway, it's the same old infighting. It's either extortion or power grabbing, the kind that I can't handle. The same old. Thales exhaled. He thought of Dragon's Blood, the Sand King, and the mission he was given by the king. King Castle floated up and down in the treacherous kingdom's politics all day long, manipulating the winds and clouds. But as his sword, his general, and his true fortress of the kingdom, the flower of the fortress before him appeared cheerful, valiant, and magnanimous. How did she do it? The voice in his heart asked. This made Thales feel an inexplicable jealousy. Yes, the same old. The young duke snorted. His words were filled with indescribably complicated emotions. I can't handle it either. Chapter 644. Sonia stared at Thale's absent-minded face, and she seemed to be deep in thought. You know, when I returned to the capital this time, I realized that everyone is very comfortable. After a while, she snorted softly and took out her tobacco pipe and cigarette again. She started to roll another cigarette. It's no longer as anxious as a few years ago. They're ready to move and flee at any time, and they're constantly worried that the Northlanders will attack again. That's a good thing. Thales nodded. And you deserve the most credit for guarding the fortress. But the fortress flower snorted softly and said in a mocking tone. In fact, I brought some people north to Black Sand region a month ago and camped in Lampard's territory. In other words, I was scouting. Thales did not turn around. He only stared at the distant lake of stars. How courageous. Now, it's very quiet there. Sonia's hand was steady and meticulous as she rolled the cigarette. She did not look like she was drunk at all. Black Sand region just went through a civil war, and everything is still recovering. But the taxes for farmers and herdsmen have been reduced, and the customs fees for merchants to cross the border have also been reduced. There are also fewer illegal bandits on the road. There are also fewer group fights between villages where the Northland boorish men never get tired of it. I heard that no matter what kind of disputes there are, they rely on new officials or a lot of king's decrees that I can't understand to solve them. King's decrees. Thales did not speak, but his thoughts slowly drifted away from sadness and lamentation. Most of the rotten and stinky Northland suzerains I've dealt with before, Levon, Ment, Devonson, Peruno, and Ika, have disappeared. Some lost their heads in the Civil War, some moved to Black Sand City, and some have been replaced by new heads who listen to the king's every word. The rest are hiding in their castles, struggling to survive. Listen to everything. Thales slowly furrowed his eyebrows. Many young Northlanders have also left the countryside. I heard that some of them joined the king's army during the Civil War, and some of them went to live in the city after the war. Those who stayed behind are also excitedly talking about how they can go to further places, such as Black Sand City, and work hard to be like other outstanding commoners, to get an official position or even a noble. Our spies further north, as well as the spies from the Secret Intelligence Department who occasionally come to Resht, also said that every day, every hour, from the fallen nobles and wandering knights, to the commoners and local ruffians, there are newcomers who enthusiastically head to Black Sand City, hoping to make a career there. Stand out from the crowd. Make a career. Thale's gaze became sharper. Is that so? Sonia nodded. She had finally finished rolling a cigarette and was carefully rubbing the butt. To be honest, I've been fighting for quite some time. I'm not afraid of the northern heavy cavalry, they're heavy swordsmen, or heavy armored axemen. In fact, with Broken Dragon Fortress in my hands, it's not a big problem for me to fight against 10 or more of them alone, but, Sonia paused for a moment. A few seconds later, she rubbed the crystal drop flint and lit the cigarette in her hand. But I can feel that something is different in the north, and this is not a question that I can answer on the battlefield with swords and mystic guns. As Thales listened to her, his old friend, words appeared in his mind. Thales, you know better than anyone else that after 6 years, the ideal Eckstead is getting further and further away from me. Now that I think about it, it might not be so far away. Thales, who had gone through the trials and tribulations after he returned to the country, felt sentimental. Just like the weak and powerless Cohen and the unshakable lower city district, those who never forget may not have accomplished their work, but there will definitely be echoes. And how did you do it, Chapman Lampard? What did you give up on this journey? The fortress flower took a deep breath and exhaled an endless stream of smoke. What do you think of the North Star who returned from the north, Your Highness? Thales snapped out of his daze. North Star, a voice whispered in Thales' heart. No, you don't like this nickname. It may seem awe-inspiring, but it carries a mocking tone, as well as an undetectable sense of rejection and alienation. It gives you a lot, but it takes away even more. I know. The Duke of Star Lake nodded slowly. 7 years ago, I was there, at the center of the storm. Thales turned around to avoid the smoke. He felt that everything in front of him was obscured by Sonia's cigarette, and it was filled with the unknown. Therefore, I know better than anyone else what kind of beast I released in Eckstedt, in Dragon Cloud City, and what kind of flames it will ignite. Beast. The fortress flower was silent for a while before she slowly said, So, can you put it back in the cage? Thales smiled. Put it back in the cage. He shook his head and sighed. No one can lock it up. It was destined to be like this when it was born more than 100 years ago. Perhaps not just 100 years ago. He quietly said in his heart. From the day humans were born, it quietly landed. Sonia snorted sarcastically. She took a puff of her cigarette and leaned against the observation deck with a solemn expression. Now, many people in Eternal Star City think that Eckstedt is mired in internal strife, divided and declining, and that it will no longer be able to launch a national expedition like it did during the Bloody Year. It will no longer be a threat to us. Thales pursed his lips. At least the first half of it is correct. Sonia ignored his words and continued. And in the past 7 years, the border between the two countries has been peaceful, and Broken Dragon Fortress has been deserted. Whether it's His Majesty, the important figures in the Imperial Conference, or even many families in the Northern Territory who have been enemies with Eckstedt for generations, they all feel that the enemy has been eliminated, and the external threat has been eliminated. Even Old Solder is no exception. He rejected my proposal to strengthen the fortress defenses, saying that he has more important matters to attend to. In fact, some people in the Imperial Conference think that I'm just being an alarmist. As Sonia finished speaking, her gaze was sharp and threatening as she stared at Thales. Thales stared back at her with a profound gaze. The only thing between them was the wisp of white smoke rising from the cigarette between Sonia's fingers. A few seconds later, Thales grinned and shook his head. Only a fool would think that Eckstedt is no longer a threat because of its decline, let alone the important figures in the Imperial Conference. I think that most of the time, they just can't help it. Can't help it. Sonia was nonchalant. When Old Solder asked me for reserve soldiers and said that he was going to Western Desert to rob the nobles, he looked very excited. It didn't seem like he was being forced by the king. Western Desert. The Sand King's plan. Thales was silent for a while. It's not the king. Thales gazed into the night sky, lost in thought. It's not the king that's forcing them, not even individuals, but things, fame, position, ideals, interests, power. It's everything they're trapped in, forcing them to make decisions that, from another perspective, may not be rational or long-term. Sonia's cigarette flickered. She frowned amidst the smoke. And that's the scariest part. Thales subconsciously gripped the ring and dagger in his pocket, feeling that they weighed a lot, one on his left and the other on his right. The most brilliant form of coercion is often subtle and silent, making you think that you're doing it voluntarily. Under the moonlight, the lookout tower regained its silence. After a while, the fortress flower flicked her cigarette and snorted coldly. Listen, I don't know what happened in Renaissance Palace, nor do I know what kind of beast you released, but what I've seen and heard this time has given me a bad feeling. The next time Broken Dragon Fortress becomes lively, I'm afraid that the things we'll have to face will be far beyond our imagination. Thales looked up. So? I need more. More what? Everything, Sonia answered without hesitation, anything that can prevent my ominous premonition from becoming reality. She took a puff of her cigarette and exhaled softly at Thales. Soldiers, money, equipment, provisions, intelligence, morale, support, and perhaps government bureaucrats who won't hold us back, although in my experience, the last one is basically impossible. Thales frowned. He lowered his head and coughed, then waved his hand to disperse the smoke. Sure enough, it's not as simple as returning to her hometown for a vacation, nor is it a coincidence that she just happened to pass by your castle. A voice said in his heart, everyone has their own goals and desires. Even the candid and magnanimous Fortress Flower, who was famous for her reputation, could not avoid this. When he thought of this, Thales felt a little gloomy. Sonia has a favor to ask of you, so you should agree to her or at least leave a message. Let's see what you can discover in the future, he whispered in his heart. Even if this is just an empty promise, this is in line with the alliance you made with the king. Make use of the enmity between you and your father to reveal every crack in the kingdom. Even the Fortress Flower. But, after a while, the Duke of Star Lake said in a low voice, I'm sorry, you've got the wrong person. I'm just an exiled prince who has fallen out of favor. I have no soldiers, no power, and I'm extremely poor. Sonia stared at him for a long while before she turned in the direction of Star Lake. It's okay. 19 years ago, when I led the army north to Eternal Star City, I met your father among a group of refugees. He was about the same. The Fortress Flower took another puff of her cigarette. In fact, Kessel had just escaped from being hunted. He was in a daze and was shivering. He was much more miserable and downtrodden than you are now. When he heard this name, Thales frowned. Then, perhaps you should look for my father for help. If I could, damn it, Sonia swore and pointed at the moon with her cigarette butt. Ever since he sat on the throne, your father has become less and less adorable and obedient. He's not the same as when we first met during the war, when you told him to kneel down, take off his clothes when you told him to dance, when you told him to dance, when you told him to be king, he cried and screamed and crawled to be crowned. Thales frowned deeply as he listened to these disrespectful words. Why did she say that? Your father is becoming less and less adorable. When I told him to be king, he would be crowned. Why did she say that to me? Sonia Cecere. She's supposed to be the corps general of the regular army of the royal family, the northern barrier of the kingdom, and the sword in the hands of the Iron Hand King, isn't she? Why? But Thales did not show it on his face. He only picked out one word from her words to tease her, strip, really. Sonia waved her hand as if she did not hear him. In short, I don't expect you to do anything now. Look at your pitiful little body. But I can wait. Wait. Amidst the smoke, the Fortress Flower flashed him a smile. But at that moment, Thales only felt empty inside. Wait. Wait for what? What else? Another voice in his heart whispered. Between you and the king, what else can she wait for? But, no, Sonia, Thales suddenly panicked. He subconsciously rubbed the bone ring in his pocket and remembered his agreement with King Kessel. Sonia switched her hand to hold the cigarette inside. As for you, just keep what I said in mind. If the kingdom has any problems, it must be in the north. You have to be prepared for the future. Thales gulped. To be prepared for the future. The future. No, impossible. Thales dispelled the inappropriate thoughts. Sonia was the commander of the fortress. She was only concerned about the threat of Axtet and the defense of the north. If the kingdom had any problems, it must be in the north. That was the crux of her words. So what? Another thought emerged from the bottom of his heart again. She said that because as the defending general of Broken Dragon Fortress, she had to say that. Because the enemy in the north is her capital. The threat of Axtet directly affects Sonia's safety and future, affects the regular army under her command, affects the resources she can obtain, affects the degree to which she is seen and valued, and affects her authority and status in the kingdom. Because she is also in the net. Unable to extricate herself. Isn't it? Isn't this what you've learned in the past few months of political games, and you've used it against the king? And you, Thales, you have to see through this. Her request for help is not that simple, no. Thales closed his eyes and interrupted his thoughts. He was thinking too much. Sonia, the Sonia he knew, was not that kind of person. Why me? Thales opened his eyes, looking a little tired. I believe that there are other knowledgeable people in the capital who can give you more substantial help. Sonia enjoyed a mouthful of tobacco and pondered for a moment. Perhaps, because you are more special. For example, daring to break into the palace to rebel and threaten your father with a sword. Thales turned around abruptly. The fortress flower raised the cigarette in her hand. Don't look at me, rumors travel fast. It definitely wasn't old Solder who told me. But Thales' heart sank. See, you're right, Thales. She came to you because you broke into the palace to rebel and yet left safely, because you proved your worth and became the second most powerful person besides the supreme throne. Hence, the situation in the kingdom changed drastically. Even the seemingly valiant, magnanimous, and heroic fortress flower was seen, she knew, and she felt, just as the king and Thales had foreseen, that Thales might be able to contend against King Kessel. So she came. Not just to return home, not just to the north, not just to your pathetic personal friendship. Thales looked at Sonia in silence, feeling vexed and uneasy. Sonia did not notice the change in Thales' gaze. She continued to smoke, immersed in the hazy smoke, completely at ease. Perhaps it's also because you are one of the few who can cure lamp art. According to Miranda, 7 years ago, you gave up the chance to escape and decisively returned to Heroic Spirit Palace, using your freedom to extinguish the flames of war between the two kingdoms. Thales took a deep breath. 7 years ago. 7 years ago again. Damn it, 7 years ago. He suddenly lost interest in the conversation in front of him. Whether it was for the defense of the fortress or for the future of the kingdom, at the end of the day, she was here to express goodwill, rope him in, ask for help, take sides, or any other euphemistic or unpleasant synonyms. She, the master of the supreme shield, Sonia Cecere, who had once saved his life. She was actually not much different from the Duke of Western Desert. The powerful and influential nobles and suzerains will scramble to find you, rope in the prince who has just returned to the kingdom, and do everything they can to win you over to their side. Sonia, even Sonia, was the same. At this thought, Thales only felt deeply disappointed. As for him, Thales Jade Star, He could no longer be as honest and open his heart to his savior as he had been when they first met. So, I think that child. Sonia took a puff of her cigarette and sighed, but there was a hidden meaning in her gaze. The child who balanced justice and forgiveness under the gallows, the child who dared to charge at Lampard, the child who dared to swing his sword at his father, should have some hope. At that moment, Thales tightened his grip on the covenant. Hope. Thales repeated mechanically. Sonia wasn't the first and wouldn't be the last. In the future, there would be more and more people who would do the same. From a certain point, the people who talked to him would be filled with schemes, interests, goals, and desires. Until there was nothing left. Thales subconsciously tightened his grip on the covenant in his pocket. But you know, Thales. This is a necessary path, and this is just the beginning. A voice spoke to him in his heart. You know, you've already made preparations. No matter what the price is. Sonia smiled and knocked on Thales' forehead. I know that you're not a big shot in Renaissance Palace yet, not yet. But the good thing is that you don't have the time to be like them, forced to the point where you have no choice but to be like them. You haven't become as annoying as them. Become them. Thales ignored her presumptuous actions. He only felt that the bone ring in his pocket was getting prickly. She thought she knew, but she did not know at all. Thales stared at her. The fortress flower smiled and said, in short, the world will not remain the same. I hope that you, in fact, many people think that you are, but I am not. Thales subconsciously shouted. The watchtower was silent for a moment. Sonia was shocked. She looked at Thales, who was breathing rapidly. The smile on her face gradually disappeared. Not what? But Thales immediately reacted and adjusted his breathing regretfully. I'm sorry, madam. I lost my composure. I might have drunk too much at night and could not concentrate. He controlled his tone and forced out a few smiles. I understand your concern about the defense of the fortress, Your Grace, but you might not know about my situation. But before he could finish, Sonia interrupted him coldly, Shut up. Thales was about to say something, but at that moment, the fortress flower's eyes shone with a terrifying light. It was sudden and sharp, and he forgot to speak. She was sizing Thales up and down carefully. Tell me, boy, how long have you been back in the capital? The teenager was stunned for a second. Half a year, I don't remember. I'm sorry for my slip of the tongue, but it's late now, Your Grace, I'm a little tired, but the fortress flower shook her head and sked before she interrupted him again. Sunset, it seems like she was right. They ked you badly. Thales frowned. What? Sonia smiled at the sky. Do you know, you're now like that mute subordinate of yours, wearing a mask to talk. Sonia raised the cigarette and curled up the corners of her lips. Her smile remained curled, and her eyes remained cold. Wearing a mask. When Thales heard that, he was silent for a moment. Ralph could not speak. Are you different now? Sonia quickly refuted him. She smiled coldly. How long has it been since you last spoke like a human? Thales was speechless for a moment. Why, are you possessed by a demon, or cursed by a witch? Cursed by a witch. Thales gulped and resisted the desire to touch the ring. I will help you push the kingdom forward, get rid of obstacles, and break the shackles. For this, I will do whatever it takes. Very well. Then, as we agreed, child, become my sword. Cut your way through all the obstacles until the kingdom is free. He took a deep breath. You don't understand, Sonia, you haven't tried it, how would you know, you don't know. The distraught Thales interrupted her loudly. His breathing quickened as he stared at Sonia, who was holding a cigarette in her hand. Sonia Cecere, you just heard a few rumors and weighed up the situation, and you rushed back to your hometown to visit me. You relied on your so-called old friendship to say some meaningful words, such as, "There are matters in the north, I can wait, prepare for the future, you are rather special." You said it in an understated, boastful, and self-righteous manner. Thales activated the sin of Hell's river and tried his best to calm his breathing. "You don't know, Sonia." Thales tried not to think too much. He stood up and tried to end the conversation as gracefully as possible. "You don't know anything. He gave you a sword." "I don't know anything," the teenager said absent-mindedly. "I, Thales Jade Star, am destined to become your enemy." "What, everything, my son, you must fulfill your promise and swing your first sword." Sonia did not speak. She sat opposite Thales and stared at him without blinking. She let the cigarette in her hand burn. But her gaze made Thales even more uneasy. He wanted to turn around and hide. Finally, the fortress flower exhaled and looked at the starry sky above her head. "You know, when I came to Star Lake Castle to enlist as a guard, my mother was so shocked." "Ah, shocked." "The nannies in the castle taught me that phrase." Thales snapped out of his daze. "What?" But Sonia didn't pay any attention to him and continued to speak. She only continued to speak airily, "And when I came here, the first thing they said when they saw me was, 'You went the wrong way, girl. The scullery and weaving workshop are not here.' And when they found out that I came here to enlist as a guard," Sonia chuckled softly. Her emotions were complicated. John is an open-minded duke, so no one dared to directly say, "Hey, girl, you are not suitable for this. You should go home to give birth and feed your child." The fortress flower turned around and asked Thales. There was an underlying meaning in her words. "Isn't it like now?" Thales, who was in a bad mood, frowned. "Now? Now what?" Sonia snorted coldly. "Now, no one dares to directly say to you, 'Hey, Prince, Duke, North Star, you are a newcomer. You are delicate, noble, soft-hearted, barbaric, boorish, and unromantic. You are not suitable for this job. You should go back to bed and sleep. When you have learned to be obedient, you can wait for your father to pass the throne to you.'" Delicate, noble, soft-hearted. Thales subconsciously clenched his fists. Sonia leaned forward and drew closer to Thales. Her tone was full of mockery. "But they all think so. It's just that most of the time, they don't even know it. And their gazes when they look at you are filled with pity and sympathy, the kind that can move them. Why, can't you sense it?" Thales suddenly felt an inexplicable indignation. Sonia narrowed her eyes. "So much so that you yourself are starting to think the same. You self-righteous little piece of trash." Thales could not listen to it anymore. He took a deep breath. "Good night, Sonia. It was nice chatting with you." But the moment he turned around, Sonia's mocking and disdainful words traveled into his ears again. Instead, they are polite and courteous, but there is a hidden meaning behind their words. "Oh, Your Highness, you are really mature, you have already done your best for your age, we cannot expect more from you." Sonia's tone became gloomy. "Just like back then, the recruiter looked at me with a strange gaze and said to me, 'Oh, what a heroine, how can a girl have such ambition? You should really let those cowardly men see you. You should really let those cowardly men see you.'" Thales stopped in his tracks. "And they said that because you are a newcomer, because you are an accident. Based on common sense, you should not be in the same room with them, just like how I was in the past." The fortress flower turned around to face the starlight on Star Lake. Her expression was numb. Thales did not turn around, but his Adam's apple bobbed. "Why are you saying all this?" "Because I know this feeling." Sonia took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, as though she was savoring the fine wine brewed from her memories. This feeling of walking into a completely unfamiliar world, facing all the unknown obstacles that you are not used to, but still having to pretend to be tough and move forward. At that moment, Thales shuddered a little. The feeling of stepping into Renaissance Palace appeared in his memory. It was cold, narrow, and oppressive. The scene when he walked into Ballard Room also appeared before his eyes. Everyone was smiling, their words were sincere, and they looked dignified. And this is your opponent's territory. It is a battlefield that they are used to for a long time. It has fixed rules, and it is an environment that is beneficial to them but harmful to others. Sonia stared at the starlight but bottomless star lake in a daze. And we are using our weaknesses to attack their strengths. We are going to accommodate them, follow them, and do the bold things that you might never be able to do. Thales was silent for a long time. Be careful, boy. You are like me, inferior to them, but like your father, superior to them. And you came back from the north, so you are outside of them. At that moment, the words Jine said to him before the royal banquet surfaced in his mind. This means that, at the end of the day, you are not them, from the inside out. But Thales tightened his grip on the dagger and the bone ring in his pocket and snorted coldly. Let me guess. What you want to say is that although you went through a lot of difficulties, you still succeeded. You passed the enlistment and became a guard, and you stayed in the castle, right? He turned around and looked at the back of the fortress flower, who was lying on the lookout. Through your power of eradication or something else, you showed the strength of a newcomer and amazed the world with a single brilliant feat. You proved that women are not inferior to men, and that you can be outstanding in a man's territory. Not only that, you even reached the peak and shocked countless people, including Duke Johns. In the end, you became one of the 3 marshals of the kingdom. So, now you want to give me chicken soup and say, hey, don't give up, you are from the fallen roar, right? Sonia did not answer. She only sighed deeply and pressed the cigarette butt in her hand on the lookout. Thales shook his head sarcastically. Save it. This is not the same at all. Once he finished speaking, Thales no longer hesitated. He turned around and left. They say that women are not suitable for the battlefield. Sonia's voice came from behind him. She was getting closer and closer. So, be careful. The sin of Hell's river surged. Thales frowned. What? But in the next second, he felt pain in the back of his knee. Thud. Thales was knocked down. When he finally reacted, he placed his arms on the ground. What are you? But the moment he turned his head in shock and anger, he saw Sonia's cold face and the bottom of a military boot slowly growing larger before his eyes. Bang. The sin of Hell's river roared madly. Thales blocked the fortress flower's kick in a split second, and the impact made his arm bones numb. His entire head was ringing. What's going on? Sonia's power of eradication was reflected to his senses. It was like an unbreakable ice, strong, sturdy, powerful, and heavy. But his good luck ended there. Sonia's next knee strike came along with the momentum and completely broke through his defense. Thales felt his vision go black, and he immediately fell on his back. Sonia knelt on his chest, grabbed his neck, and pressed him firmly on the ground. The sin of Hell's river flowed madly in the air, but it could do nothing. Damn it! How can this gap be so big? CKU, Thales cursed in exasperation, but what followed was a merciless slap from the fortress flower. Slap. The slap could not be said to be unbearably hot. Not only did it make Thales dizzy and see stars, it also slapped the prince's anger back into his mouth, and he could only pant. Children should not swear, Sonia, who was suppressing him, said coldly. Don't CK him all the time. The lookout was located in the middle of the castle, and the guard's focus was mainly on external threats, which was also the reason why Thales chose this place. But even so, the sounds of fighting could still be heard. Who's making a ruckus up there? Lights lit up on the slightly shorter castle wall and shone on the lookout. A voice that Thales was very familiar with rose, and it was filled with righteousness. Stand up, raise your hands, and show your face. Let me see. Sonia snorted coldly. She turned her knee and pressed down on Thales' neck. Damn it, why is it my neck again? Furious Thales. I'm King a man here. The fortress flower straightened her body and revealed half of her head. Her roar shook the entire castle. Do you have King problem with that? Once she finished speaking, she lowered her head and spoke to Thales without hiding it. Scream, scream louder. Are you not full yet, you piece of trash? Use all of your strength. Thales was shocked and angry at the same time. Unfortunately, his neck was pressed down, and he was tongue-tied. He could only let out a few sounds. Hearing her voice, the patrolman on the castle wall was silent for a few seconds. Ah, it's Lady Cecile. The next moment, the patrolman's voice became gentle and obsequious. It's a misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding, haha. Sorry to disturb you. Duke Thales asked me to bring you good news on his behalf. Please be gentle. Zombie is my partner. He might be big, but he might not be able to withstand your strong, get lost. Sonia's roar rose again. Under the watchtower, the patrolman's voice and his lights disappeared at the same time. Many of the Jade Star private soldiers who came with him also disappeared. It was only then that Sonia sneered. She released Thales' neck slightly and lowered her head. Now, no one will disturb us anymore. Thales had never hated his guards as much as he did at that moment. He swore that once he was free, what awaited Doyle would be the most terrifying punishment and torture in the world, something the latter could not imagine. The sin of Hell's River continued to gather in his arm, but the teenager could not break through the fortress flower's blockade. Sonia, whose gaze was originally cold, suddenly grinned and giggled as she watched him struggle in a pathetic manner while tears and mucus flowed down his face. In the next second, she let go of her knees, dragged Thales up from the ground, and leaned against the watchtower. Thales, who had been pardoned, could not be bothered to retaliate and take revenge. He panted in pain and rubbed his chest. You crazy woman, what do you want to do? I screwed up. Her casual words made Thales' words come to an abrupt halt. Screwed up? What screwed up? Thales panted and could not help but look at Sonia. I failed during the entrance test for the recruitment of castle guards. Even with all my strength, I could not lift a weight stone. Sonia was smiling. But at that moment, the smile on the fortress flower's face looked tired, bitter, and numb. She did not have the demeanor of a general who dominated the battlefield and resisted the northern invaders. Thales did not know how to answer her, which was rare to see. It was the same for the long-distance running test. My stamina did not pass at all. Sonia did not seem to realize that she had just bullied the prince. She turned around tiredly and sat down next to Thales. There was also shooting. I managed to draw my bow while trembling, but I just could not hit the target. There was also reading and writing. Did I tell you that it was the wet nurse in the castle who taught me how to read? She stared fixedly at the night sky. As for fighting, it was even worse. I guess I was more used to swinging a hoe and hitting people, rather than wearing armor and wielding a sword to kill people. Even new recruits could knock me down. Thales slowly regulated his breathing. Although I was considered a good hand among the farmers, and I was also known as a shrew in all the villages around here, and I even fought with wild boars and bandits with a pitchfork, among the men who came from all over the country to wield their swords, Sonia said faintly, in short, I screwed up. Among all the applicants, as the only woman, my results were the worst. I remember their gazes and mockery. And all my efforts were in vain. I proved to them once again that women are not suitable for the battlefield, and perhaps even more so, should not be soldiers. They can't do those fighting and killing things. I screwed up. Thale's breathing paused for a second. At that moment, the fortress flower, whose might shook the entire western peninsula, slowly raised her head. She stared at the bright moon and the starry sky in a daze. Her drunkenness seemed to have returned to her senses. All my dignity, persistence, and hope were shattered by the bloody reality the moment I walked into this unfamiliar world. Sonia turned her head to look at Thales and revealed a weak smile that did not match her identity as the fortress flower. Just like you. End of this chapter. Chapter 645. And those people, of course, took it for granted. I told you so, it's okay, it's normal, you're already great, you just have to accept reality, this job is more suitable for men. Sonia took out her tobacco pouch and started rolling a third cigarette. You know, they always sound so righteous and convincing, always so rational, neutral, objective, and sincere. Sonia's gaze focused on the tobacco in her hand. In the end, I almost believed it. Maybe I really messed up, maybe I'm really not suited to be a soldier. The fortress flower turned around and grinned at Thales. Right? Thales did not answer immediately. He sat on the ground with his back against the observation deck and his hands on his knees. His expression was deep. They always sound so righteous and convincing. At the royal banquet, the scene where Vice Captain Vogel asked Doyle to die was still fresh in his mind. I'm different from you. I didn't mess up. The teenager suddenly spoke. I can solve it. I'm just trying, adapting. I need time. Sonia paused in the act of rolling the cigarette. She turned to look at Thales. Adapting. The fortress flower smiled at first, but her expression immediately turned cold. Oh, Sunset, looks like you really messed up. Thales furrowed his brows. Sonia finished rolling the cigarette and sneered. And not just a little. Otherwise, you wouldn't be living in a dead man's house, your father wouldn't be sneaking around to look for you, and Gines wouldn't be yelling and threatening me to fix you. Thales was initially unconvinced, but when he heard that, he looked up in surprise. Gines, Madame Gines. Sonia held the cigarette in her mouth skillfully and took out a flint. Are you sure you don't want a puff? Thales looked at the crude appearance of the cigarette and twitched the corner of his mouth. Sonia shrugged, lit the cigarette in 2 or 3 puffs, and took a satisfied puff before sighing. All right, kid, maybe between the two of us, you're the one who's not suited to be a soldier. F***ck, Thales waved the smoke away and shifted his butt to the side. His expression was unpleasant. I know, you've just returned to the capital, which means you've stepped into a new battlefield. But every rule of the new battlefield is disadvantageous and unfair to you. They make you feel unfamiliar, lost, desperate, and unable to see a way out. Thales frowned and did not comment. Sonia exhaled a puff of smoke. It's different from what most people think. It's not difficult to wield a sword in battle. Even the so-called risking one's life sacrifice is just a matter of being hot-headed and clenching one's teeth for a moment. What's truly difficult is knowing what to fight for. As he listened to her words, Thales suddenly remembered what Mallows had said after punishing D. When you decide to trade, make sure that it is your own balance. But when you look upwards, away from the specific opponents, when you see more, when you look higher, when you realize that the rules of battle are so kept up from the very beginning, when you realize that your battle is just a monkey's show in a cage, and you can never change the cage, then battle will become very, very difficult. It's like my sword is no longer hitting a body of flesh and steel, but an invisible wall. No matter how I swing my sword, it's useless. For some reason, Thales suddenly recalled Cohen's words in Lower City District. The fortress flower blew at the half-burnt cigarette butt and said calmly, nervousness, fear, panic, mistakes, regret, wavering, self-doubt, and even numbness and giving up. We've experienced all of these. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Under the moonlight, the lookout tower was cold and quiet. With the smoke from Sonia's hand, everything felt like a dream. You failed to enlist as a guard just like that? Thales suddenly asked with an expressionless face. Sonia crossed one of her legs and curled her lips, but she shook her head. I got lucky. An important person happened to pass by, and I got a second chance. I stayed here and waited for the next recruitment. The fortress flower's voice was a little gloomy. An important person. Thales looked around Star Lake Castle. John Jadestar. Sonia chuckled. She held the cigarette in her mouth again, leaned back, and supported the back of her head with her hands. The days after that were tough. I ate and slept with the guards in the castle, trained hard, and prepared to pass the next assessment. At this moment, there was something else in Sonia's gaze. Pretty words of comfort disappeared from then on. No one was nice to me. Everyone was isolating me. And I also understood that I had taken advantage of them. I did not follow their rules and entered the game. This made the group of men feel that their rights had been violated. A woman who was given special treatment took a shortcut to get in, it's too unfair to men, and so on. From the arrangement of beds and shifts to my daily routine, from the frequent emergency training, to the increased weight training, to the fact that I was coincidentally assigned to the cleaning job every single time, they used all kinds of methods to embarrass me. After they were done, there would always be someone who had been through it and would say, "They're not targeting you, they're just upset," or "I'm very sorry, but maybe you should give up." Thales listened quietly, but he remembered the moment at the royal banquet, when Anchor had taken hostages and forced him to abdicate the throne for a duel. At that moment, all the guests at the banquet, all the reputable people in Eternal Star City, raised their heads and stared at him. Including every friendly match within the team. Sometimes, I would bite the bullet and win, and they would say, "You're lucky, I'm going easy on you, I'm a little tired today, I'll let you win," or, "You cheated, fight me head on if you're good enough." The outcome of the battle would have been different on another occasion, or even, "You're definitely going to die if you fight with your life on the line, a real battle won't be that simple, blah, blah, and so on. Oh, right, and my favorite line, "Winning against me doesn't prove that you're better than men. If you're good enough, go and compete with a stronger man." Sonia flicked the ash off her cigarette and chuckled. Does every man say this? I call it a few sharing spells. Every time I beat one of them, they would say this. It's as if as long as I say this, the defeated guy would instantly share a few stronger men's bigger hands. He would then puff out his chest and regain his masculinity, turning from weak and weak to invincible. A few sharing spells. Thales could not help but snicker. But his smile soon faded away. There are also people like this in my battlefield, aren't there? And when I lost, they would say in unison, "See, I told you so, this is perfectly normal, generally speaking, women really can't beat men, that's enough, based on your standards, it's already very good." Sonia's tone of voice dropped. At that time, everything was very depressing. Swordsmanship, combat, weightlifting, long-distance running, javelin throwing, archery. It seemed like I couldn't beat others in any of them, especially those men who had received training and even served in the military. I didn't have their strength, speed, explosiveness, physique. These are the things that people usually compete against in sports competitions and night duels. I didn't have everything they were proud of. A dark cloud blocked the moonlight, leaving the teenager and the woman in darkness. Both of them were dejected. But you won, Thales said softly, in this unfair rule. Sonia was silent for a long time before she took a deep breath and slowly exhaled the smoke from her nose. I didn't win. I just survived. The fortress flower's unfocused gaze slowly became focused again. As the days passed and the next recruitment date approached, I was so disheartened that I almost gave up on myself. Then, someone asked me, "Why, Sonia? Why are you on their chessboard?" When he heard this, Thales looked up. Their chessboard. Sonia smiled and nodded, as if she had thought of something happy. I was asked, there are many ways for soldiers to fight, and there are also many ways to kill people. Why must we learn from them to use muscles, physique, strength, and explosiveness? Why must we learn from them to make a ruckus all day long? Why must we pursue their pursuit of strength, boorishness, domineeringness, masculinity, and aggressiveness? Why must we use it as a standard to prove ourselves? Why should we learn these things from them and compete with them? Thales narrowed his eyes. Sonia sighed. Because, I said foolishly at that time, because these things are useful, because the officers said that these are things that are competed in the tournament, things that have been tested by history, and are also things that every soldier on the battlefield needs and are good things. When she said this, the fortress flower chuckled. That's because the earliest tournament was only for men, I was told. So, of course, they have to compete in the things they are good at. When have you ever seen them compete in childbirth? Thales' expression changed. And soldiers need these things not just because these things are good. Sonia sat cross-legged. She even forgot to smoke and let the cigarette burn slowly in her hand. That person told me, it's because they are already soldiers, and they are used to, and are good at these things, strength, boorishness, domineeringness, masculinity, aggressiveness. Most of the time, they only use these things, so these things become useful and good. They are then passed down to the later generations. As more and more people use them, fewer and fewer people doubt them, and everyone tacitly agrees that this is common sense and truth. Sonia was in a trance as she recounted, as though she had returned to that moment many years ago. Because this is the tournament they control, the battlefield they define, and one of their most cunning tricks is to allow you to participate in the game, then defeat you in these rules and events that do not allow you to be doubted, and then tell you, look, you didn't win, you can't do it. Thales subconsciously said, but, however, the fortress flower did not allow him to continue. She continued, so, Sonia, why is it that you are already at a disadvantage in the chessboard that men are all too familiar with and have dominated for thousands of years? If that's the case, why? Why do you have to follow the rules they set, the tournament standards they are used to, the survival principles they set, and the habits they are all too familiar with? When the armors and weapons that you can obtain are all made according to men's requirements, how can you rely on these to fight against them? Why do you have to follow the rules they set, the tournament standards they are used to, and the survival principles they set? Thales' gaze gradually drifted away. When they even treat the size of a few swords as standard events in the tournament and require everyone to compete against them in length, how are you going to win? By pretending to be a man. Sonia sneered. Thales snapped out of his daze and realized that he had missed a part. Is this a metaphor? Sonia turned her head around and smiled evilly. It depends on you. Thales raised his eyebrows. At that moment, the eyes of the fortress flower before him were like torches that pierced through the fog and confusion. Don't listen to them, I was told. Even if you want to win their prizes, don't act according to their standards, don't act according to what they say, don't pretend to be a man, even if that is the only way you can prove to them, because if you do that, you will really lose. It was that night that I realized how stupid I was in the past. She turned to the pondering teenager. Thales, don't be stupid. Don't listen to them, don't pretend. Thales clenched his fists. Don't listen to them. At that moment, he inexplicably thought of Quick Rope and the words the latter had said to him, single quote. Don't play against him on the same chessboard, Thales, because you don't know how many tricks he has up his sleeves and how many cards he has up his sleeves. And those who are toyed with by their father without knowing it are extremely sad. Immediately after, Thales thought of Chapman Lampard. I'm not. I'm fighting, in my own way. Thales subconsciously opened his mouth to refute. Almost at the same time he thought of the man whose gaze was as cold as ice and whose ice was burning with fire. Of course, you're not physically affected, but what about your brain? Sonia stared at him and extended her hand to point at Thales' chest. What about here? Thales did not speak. The scar on his chest where he was burned by a silver coin when he was young seemed to be burning slightly. A few swords originally only grew in one place. Sonia raised her cigarette again and said sarcastically, but the reality is that after thousands of years, they became something else. They're everywhere. They don't grow naturally, but they're man-made. Thales pursed his lips. What happened after that? He asked hoarsely. Sonia's gaze flickered. After that, I didn't risk my life to arm wrestle with them, compete in weightlifting, and compete in speed. There must be something, I thought. She narrowed her eyes, as though she was recalling the time when she was deep in thought. There must be something on this chessboard that they ignored, abandoned, and disapproved of for a long time, but I could pick it up and make use of it. Even though it was very difficult, because this chessboard had belonged to them for too long, and the rules of the game had been set for them for too long, to the point that everyone felt that they were born that way. But I couldn't give up. No matter how loud they laughed, how nasty their curses were, what they used to stop me, what dirty jokes they used to set me up, how I slept with so many people to get close to the Duke, and how I almost wore out my crotch. What kind of joke is this? I'm the #1 shrew in the 6 great villages and towns. I've heard all kinds of dirty jokes, and kicked all kinds of ugly things. Unknowingly, the dark clouds gradually dispersed. Moonlight fell, and smoke surrounded the observatory. Sonia snorted softly. I stayed. I persevered. I worked hard to train, learn, and observe. Time and time again, I lost to men and those strong people. Then, gradually, I discovered something interesting in the most inconspicuous, neglected, and mocked places, but most people disdained. I had a better sense of balance. I could jog on the single-plank bridge that they could not even stand steadily on, and walk on the bumpy and broken roads. I was small and light. I could crawl into smaller gaps and hide in narrower bushes. I could be equipped with different kinds of mounts. Sonia opened her mouth and gently exhaled a hollow ring of smoke. I had more coordinated and flexible fingers and wrists. My weapon belt was tied more finely and tightly than theirs. It was easier to adjust it. My longbow was more accurate, comfortable, and tight than theirs. My sense of smell, sight, and hearing was more sensitive than most people. There was a time when John said that my nose was even more sensitive than his hound. I could endure pain, cold, and hunger better than a considerable number of soldiers. This was probably because of my mother. When I was young, she had to work in the fields to earn money for the family. She had to squat by the river for several hours and wash countless basins of clothes. I still don't know how she did it. In harsh environments, I could hide and persevere for a very long time. Although I was weak, I used up less energy. Even after I exhausted all my strength, I only needed to rest for half the time and eat half of their food before I could stand up and jump around again. In long-distance running, which was even longer than the longest long-distance running, or cross-country running, I might not be faster than them. I might not be more conspicuous than them, but I was steadier, more precise, and less prone to fatigue, drowsiness, dizziness, and disorientation. Thales listened with rapt attention. That's it. Endurance, balance, adaptability, memory, meticulousness, tenacity, and recovery rate. Low energy consumption, high agility. And did you know that I only recently realized that women live longer than men? Even in peaceful times. The fortress flower curled her lips. So I learned to display my ability to endure pain and use a more reliable body part to receive attacks. When they were surprised by, "Why didn't you fall down?" I gritted my teeth and counterattacked. I learned to choose a battlefield environment that was more suitable for me instead of sitting down on flat ground and arm wrestling with them. If these didn't work, I would simply avoid a head-on confrontation and fight a war of attrition. I would hide myself and maneuver my opponent. I would bet that he would be exhausted, frozen, or faint from hunger before me. She slapped her thigh and sighed. Of course. Men would rather die than admit that I'm better than them with all these qualities. There would always be people who would retort, and there would always be people who would say, "Why don't you compete with the royal guards?" But there was one thing they admitted. Sonia blinked and pointed at Thale's head. My head. Although I think it's because John said, "She's smarter than all of you" first, and no matter how unwilling they were, they did not dare to offend the Duke. Thales chuckled softly. Sonia became excited as she spoke. She held a cigarette in one hand and waved the other. She did not care about her saliva splattering everywhere. You know, people always think that men are smarter, more rational, calmer, better at hiding their emotions, more determined and rational, while women are slower, less rational, weaker, emotionally unstable, and only know how to be hysterical. But in my long military career, I have never noticed this. You know, almost every soldier is hot-tempered, easily angered, and impulsive. They can't help but want to masturbate or get into a fight if they haven't been forced to do it for 3 days. They don't seem to be any better than women. Sonia shook her head. I don't know where the conclusion that men are more rational came from. From men, Thales suddenly said. You know, the more lacking something, the more they want to brag about it. Sonia was stunned at first before she burst out laughing. Wait, aren't you angry when you hear this? The fortress flower put away her laughter. When most men hear this, they will become angry out of humiliation, deny it, and stomp their feet in anger. At the very least, they will pretend to be serious and say that they can't overturn a boat full of people. Thales shrugged. Isn't that exactly what you want? Men are not rational. Oh, sh*t, you're really quick on the uptake. Sonia frowned. If I mention this again in the future, someone will definitely retort, look, Prince Thales is also a man, he is very rational. There is no need for that. Thales politely waved his hand and leaned back. I don't plan to share a few. Sonia laughed heartily again. She raised her head and looked at the bright moon surrounded by stars. Her words were filled with emotion. In short, I make use of my strengths to make up for my weaknesses. I am me, and I want to do my own thing, not do what they want me to do according to their standards and pointlessly prove to them that I can be a man. Thales suddenly felt that the bone ring in his lapel did not seem so heavy anymore. Did you pass the guard's assessment? At that moment, Sonia's smile faded away. When I was waiting for the next chance to try and overturn the rules, the assessment came early, unexpectedly. The fortress flower stood up and took a deep puff of her cigarette. A group of bandits entered the Wong family's hunting forest to settle down. The Star Lake Guards brought new recruits to suppress the bandits, but the information was wrong. Those were not ordinary bandits, but the advance scouts of the rebel army of Blade Edge Hill. Her words sounded a little desolate. We were held back in the forest for an entire month, and we suffered great losses. Our communication route was cut off, and we could not advance or retreat. Sonia nodded slowly. It was during that battle that I passed the assessment. As Thales listened to her nonchalant and calm words, he suddenly realized that there was a soul-stirring story hidden behind all of this. But I also understood one thing. On a real battlefield, when people on both sides pounce on each other like wild beasts, when your enemy only wants to stab your stomach with a knife along with his own hand, when your comrade's intestines are mixed with blood and are leaking out, the fortress flower's expression turned cold. She raised the remaining cigarette in her hand. No one cares if you are a man or a woman. Her words made Thales remember the countless bloody scenes he had experienced. His expression could not help but darken. He stood up as well. I am very sorry. Sonia shook her head. She did not care. Just like that, I discovered another advantage of mine, my mind. No matter what kind of environment I am in, I can grit my teeth and calm down. I can endure what others can't. I can force myself to think, to summarize, to consider the situation of the battlefield, where each of our teams are, what condition everyone is in, what the enemy might do next, what we should do next, and what we should do next, to make a more beneficial and rational decision. Thales' expression was strange. But I remember that you said before that you only fought blindly in Broken Dragon Fortress. Sonia chuckled and slapped her thigh. That's why I don't have a few. Thales was stunned. He was momentarily speechless. There's another example. During the Bloody Year, we were caught in a tug-of-war with the Extensions along Shepherd's River. Bloody Year. When Thales heard this term, his smile faded. Araka and his Fury Guards were the vanguard. They fought without regard for their lives and were not afraid of death. They dared to fight against Extet's army in the field. Countless Northland warriors died in his hands. The kingdom's wrath became famous in the Western Peninsula. It was said that even King Nuvan's first question when he woke up every day was, "Is Araka Murch dead?" The fortress flower shook her finger and pursed her lips. Just as Araka's name became more famous and more constellations died, they became more desperate and fanatical. Your father even wanted to recruit young soldiers into the army and perish together with the Northlanders. At that time, I calmed down. I thought, we can't do this, and then I went and did something. What was it? Sonia took a deep breath. Before Araka's method of exchanging one-for-one mad dog killed him and his subordinates, I bypassed the main battlefield and went deep into the enemy's rear. I suddenly found the northern territory occupied by the Extensions. I recaptured Cold Castle. She said this in the same casual tone, as if it was of no importance. Bloody Year, recapture Cold Castle, but when Thales connected his memories and figured it out, his expression instantly changed. What? Why, you don't believe me? Sonia raised her eyebrows. Thales blinked hard and tried hard to recall his historical knowledge. No. Wait a minute, as far as I know, 200 years ago, Conqueror of the North Erica mobilized all the soldiers in the kingdom and laid out a three-sided pocket. During that time, she came up with countless strategies and fought ceaselessly. Thanks to luck, she was able to seize the largest and most fertile Cold Castle in the Northern Territory, forcing the Extensions to retreat to the Northern Plains and Black Sand Mountain. He stared at the fortress flower in disbelief. But during the Bloody Year, you went north alone, without any reinforcements, and faced the threat of 100,000 soldiers. How did you do it? Why haven't I heard of this at all? But Sonia only smiled mysteriously. According to Old Solder, one of the prerequisites for King Nuvan's willingness to negotiate was not to disclose the truth about the loss of Cold Castle. 100,000 mighty Northland warriors, unstoppable and invincible, were stabbed in the ass by a woman. Thales recalled King Nuvan's voice and smile and instantly had a strange expression. Are you suspecting me? Sonia was very dissatisfied with his attitude. Hey, why do you think that arrogant Valorant has been so respectful to me for the past 10 years, and has never been short on supplies? And why did his daughter, Miranda, willingly serve under me? Because I was the one who took old Duke Dylan's head down from Cold Castle's gate and returned it to the Arund family. And conversely, why did your father send me to guard the fortress instead of Immerse, who is more famous and can intimidate the Northlanders? With the cigarette in her mouth, Sonia crossed her arms. Could it be because I'm good-looking? Thales pondered and nodded. You are indeed good-looking. In that instant, Sonia's expression froze and the cigarette fell from her mouth to the ground. Thales came to his senses and quickly explained, I mean, that, when you fight, you're very good-looking, you dropped your cigarette. Sonia seemed very unused to such an answer. As she bent over to pick up the cigarette, she was surprised, doubtful, secretly delighted, introspective, and in denial. Her expression kept changing, and lasted for a few seconds. TSK, good-looking, you mean, including these. She snorted softly and straightened her body. She lifted her clothes to reveal the skin above her ribs, then pulled open her collar to reveal her shoulders and collarbone. And these? Thales was shocked. Those are scars. Oh my God. Under Sonia's clothes, from her abdomen to her back, from her shoulders to her neck, there were bumps and hollows everywhere. They were filled with crisscrossing scars from knives, arrows, and burns. There were also sunburned scars. The old and new skin were intertwined together, and the depth of the scars varied. This is the price for transforming from a farmer's daughter to the fortress flower? Thales stared at the scars on her body in a daze. After a while, he realized something and turned his face away in embarrassment. Yes, including these. You're also good-looking, based on other standards. The fortress flower furrowed her brows. She tied up her clothes and sized up Thales again. That's strange. You don't seem to be trying to smooth things over out of politeness, like saying things like, you look very heroic or very unique. She scratched her head. Ever since my parents passed away, no one has ever praised me for being beautiful. My nanny even advised me to ignore my appearance. Damn it, it feels weird to be praised for being beautiful. Is this William's daily life in the Western Desert? Thales' expression darkened. No, I can guarantee that no one in the Western Desert would dare to praise the legendary Wing for being beautiful. At least not to her face. Thales coughed. Actually, just saying thank you will do. But he remembered something. No wonder. Thales sighed. No wonder King Nuvan, that stubborn old man, was willing to sit down and negotiate with Constellation during the Bloody Year. It was not because of Gilbert's glib tongue, nor was it because of the kingdom's wrath, which was terrifying and intimidating, nor was it because of my father's young soldier. It was because of you. Thales stared at her. It was because of Cold Castle that King Nuvan made his final decision and brought about the Fortress Treaty. Countless people in Constellation owe you a great debt of gratitude. But Sonia only smiled faintly and waved her hand. John once said that reputation is like shit in the Eastern Peninsula. Ahem, all right, it's nice to be praised occasionally. She scratched her chin and enjoyed the last few puffs of smoke. Seeing her like this, Thales could not help but feel sentimental. In comparison, his diplomatic mission to Ekstedt 7 years ago to stop the flames of war seemed to be nothing. I have a question. Thales furrowed his brows. Both of you were promoted to nobility during the Bloody Year and were generals who commanded the regular army for the royal family. Why was the kingdom's wrath and the legendary Wing conferred the title of Baron, while you, Sonia Cecere, who made outstanding contributions, are just a lady? Yes, I'm also very curious. The fortress flower's face was full of mockery. Not only that, I'm ranked last among the so-called 3 marshals. Speaking of this, she seemed to be full of complaints. And the fortress flower. Damn it, which soldier likes to be called a flower? Does it wait to be fertilized, pruned, plucked, presented to someone to confess to, or wait to bloom and then wither? Why don't I see them calling Araka the kingdom's flower and Roman the legendary flower? Really, if you met that pretty boy, you would understand that this is the nickname he should have, okay? Thales nodded repeatedly as he listened to her evaluation of Williams. Then, what do you want to be called? This really stumped Sonia. Let me think, Wolf of the Fortress. Thales snickered. Very good. The fortress flower stared at him for a while before she suddenly smiled. Now, you make me feel like you're still the same child who saved a deserter when you first arrived at the fortress and I carried him on my shoulder. You're still the child who cried because you were afraid of heights. Thales' smile froze, and he looked embarrassed. I did so many impressive things in the past, and you just had to bring this up. Sonia shook her head and hinted at something. To me, this is much more impressive than your stupid act of forcing me to abdicate with a sword. Thales fell silent and seemed to be deep in thought. Sonia continued to smoke her cigarette with a similarly profound expression. A few seconds later, Thales suddenly spoke. Can you give me a puff? Sonia was stunned at first, but she seemed to have understood something. She smiled evilly. Oh. Where did the children can't smoke go? According to the Empire's custom, men become adults at the age of 14. Thales did not look ashamed. Sonia exchanged glances with him and smiled. The former extended her cigarette-holding hand to him. Take it easy, smuggled goods from dragon-kissed land are very expensive. Then I'll provide you with free food and accommodation. Don't worry, I'm just sharing cigarettes, not sharing a few with you. Oh, right, I still remember that slap you gave me just now. F*CKU. Hey, if you want to F*CK me back, I'll be waiting for you anytime. Forget it, I don't dare to F*CK the wolf of the fortress. Thales took the cigarette from the fortress flower without hesitation, put it in his mouth, and inhaled deeply. Cough. Cough. Cough, cough, cough. It was only the first puff, but Thales was already choked by the strange spiciness and coughed continuously. He trembled in the cloud of smoke he exhaled. He quickly handed the cigarette back and swore that he would never take a second puff. Oh, I misjudged you. You can't be a soldier. Sonia took back her cigarette and gloated. You can still be a smoker. Thales was busy coughing and had no choice but to raise his middle finger in response. What is this? I think I saw that mute do it to Miranda. This is a common friendly gesture used by Northlanders, or Southern Constellations when they greet each other. Sonia smiled faintly and took the last puff of her cigarette. She then raised her middle finger at him. How are you, you little bastard? Anyway, thank you. The prince finally calmed down. He turned around and faced the forest in the distance of Star Lake Castle. I've thought through a lot and I feel much better. Really? Really? At that moment, the weight of Gertoxa was no longer like a knife on his back. Thales raised his head and faced the gentle moonlight. He sighed. I suddenly realized that compared to what you're facing, what you've faced before, and what you're facing now, the battlefield I'm about to enter doesn't seem to be that difficult, nor is it that bad. As a newcomer to the game and a challenger, he could not pretend to be like them and play by their rules. He could never. I'm a little tired. There should be a lot of mistakes in my wording. I'll go back tomorrow and edit it. End of this chapter. Chapter 646. In the spacious starlight courtyard of Star Lake Fortress, commonly known as the Lumberyard, soldiers, guards, workers, farmers, and many others gathered together to form an open space. The atmosphere was lively. Go, go, go. Give her a good one. Yes, that's it. Float. Wow, that's a good fall. It's okay, believe in yourself, lad. Get up and continue beating her up. Io, your sword is so soft. Are you always like this? Are you having too much fun, or are you hoping for your wife to cheat on you? In the center of the open space, Miranda Arun's figure moved agilely between two warriors. She was engaged in an unfair 1 versus 2 duel with the guards of the Star Lake Guards, Ness and Bastia. As usual, the young Vanguard trainee attacked like a tidal wave and became more courageous as the battle progressed, while the Iron Tower-like guard officers stood firm and impenetrable. And what's that, an iron bucket or an iron tower? On the wooden watchtower, the fortress flower Sonia leaned against the railing and leaned half of her body out. She waved her arms enthusiastically and cheered for the battle below. Don't just stand there, pick up your hammer and hit her head with all your might. That's right, what, that's it. Does it get into a pit when you pee? In the storeroom on the second floor, Thales sat by the window and watched the battle with great interest while oiling and maintaining the ancient sword, Sentinel. He quickly realized that although it was 1 against 2, Miranda was the one leading the battle. The swordswoman of the Arun family deliberately instigated Ness to continue attacking to deplete his stamina, while forcing Bastia to act as her shield to block Ness's blazing attacks. Unfortunately, Ness and Bastia's teamwork was not smooth, and their hands and feet were tied. There was no sign of the advantage of a 2-man pincer attack. Just like that, Miranda skillfully controlled the pace of the duel, and as the battle progressed, she became more and more proficient. She's different. The feedback from Hell's senses allowed Thales to make a judgment. Compared to 7 years ago, her movements and footwork appeared disorderly and casual, no longer displaying a distinct rhythm and style. But whether it was Ness or Bastia, the moment they initiated an attack, they would find themselves in the worst possible situation, giving Miranda the biggest opportunity. It felt as if Miranda was not the one taking the initiative, but the opponent was rushing to attack her, shaping the environment and situation of the battle, stimulating a bunch of originally messy and meaningless notes into a lively and orderly movement, waiting for Miranda to play it. She's improved. Thales stopped what he was doing and was slightly lost in thought. 7 years ago, her movements clearly showed the style of the Northern offensive and defensive. The transition between offense and defense was like an undeniable stress that could instantly turn the tide, but now? No. Although the style of the Tower of Eradication's Pegasus faction is rather influential, her foundation of the Northern faction is still there. Malos sat next to Thales and sharpened a short knife without raising his head. It's just that the tactical style on the surface is hidden in a deeper tactical style. You will understand once you see more of it. Here it comes again, King of Constellation Yuyin. Thales curled his lips sarcastically. So, you've seen quite a lot. It's not that bad, Malos replied calmly. When I was still a young probationer, I did record work. So, which battle left the deepest impression on you? Here. Thales raised his head. Malos did not stop moving. He only switched to another side and continued to polish his blade. A long time ago, an elite from Star Lake Fort sparred with a senior of the Royal Guards. I was ordered to be the flag bearer's assistant. I listened to his explanations while observing and recording. An elite from Star Lake Fort, a senior of the Royal Guards. Thales narrowed his eyes. Due to the limitations of the conditions, they did not attack each other. They only shifted their positions on the flat ground to attack and defend. Their power of eradication was like a flash in the pan, like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. It stopped abruptly before it was fully displayed, so they could not enjoy themselves to the fullest. Malos' gaze was slightly dull. But in those short 12 seconds, the two of them advanced and retreated, back and forth. Every detail was at the peak of supreme class or even higher. It's enough for me to reminisce for the rest of my life. Thales was about to ask further when he heard boos erupt from the crowd. Miranda sheathed her sword nimbly and turned around elegantly. The crowd consciously parted to form a path for her to leave. Behind her, Ness and Bastia collapsed to the ground, one exhausted, the other bruised and swollen. The outcome has been decided, Your Highness. Mallows did not even turn his head. Now, follow the essentials I taught you and focus on maintaining your weapon. Order was restored on the training field. Everyone returned to their positions. Those who practiced and those who were on duty. Only in a small corner, a few Star Lake guards were still gathered together in a heated discussion. They were not satisfied with this exciting and asymmetrical battle. Quick, quick, quick. The outcome has been decided. Those who bet must accept their losses. Doyle squeezed through the crowd with a righteous look on his face, but he flashed a coin pouch under his elbow. Before Mallows comes down, don't try to cheat. I remember who bet how much. Damn it. Losing when it's 2 against 1. How unlucky. Vladivostok painfully counted a few coins and threw them into Doyle's coin pouch. The others who lost the bet, including Ralph, who snorted in dissatisfaction, also took out their money reluctantly and stuffed the coins into the coin pouch. I know she's in Broken Dragon Fortress and belongs to the Fortress Flower. Paul Bosdorf, the son of the Count of Black Lion, calmly handed over a gold coin. But I didn't expect, you don't have to keep the change, that she's fighting 1 against 2, and she's actually not at a disadvantage. You bastards, how did you know to bet on her? Kursta asked in annoyance. It's obvious that she's killed before. Her sword is stained with a lot of blood. At the front of the team, Glover rejected the coin that Doyle handed over. He looked at Miranda's receding figure with a sharp gaze, eager to fight. Quite a lot. Chief Miranda's swordsmanship is quite profound. I've experienced it before. But, gambling is still wrong. Wyo looked around nervously. I don't know the Arund family's girl, but I saw old Kong bet on her, so... Logistics Officer Praka shrugged. Actually, I don't know Miss Arund either. But when the Fortress Flower let them fight 2 against 1, I knew that Ness would lose. Don't ask me why, Commodore, who was on the winner's side, coughed. When he saw the dejected Ness walking over sullenly, he immediately went up to console him. Hey, Ness. You fought well, just a little unlucky. Keep up the good work. Oh yeah, I'll treat you tonight. Doyle, who pretended to be indifferent from the waist up and happily counted money from the waist down, was the shortest. Prince Thales is up there, staring at that girl. Everyone looked at him. What's wrong? Doyle raised an eyebrow and hurriedly put away the money pouch, as if it was a matter of course. This is very telling. All right, His Highness is finally paying attention to women. Everyone hissed in disdain. You'd better not let His Highness or Miss Miranda hear that. Wyatt sighed and shook his head. I'm speaking from experience. Of course. Doyle confidently weighed the money pouch in his hand. He was in high spirits. In the storeroom on the 2nd floor, Thales, who had already heard this through Hell's senses, turned around indifferently. Thor, how many people in the Star Lake Guards do you think can defeat Miranda? I don't know. Why Thor? Tormund's nickname, take a guess. Nicknames have to be agreed upon by the person herself. After all, the people in the Star Lake Guards have never fought against Miss Arund directly, and battles are also affected by the environment. Mallows was meticulous in his sharpening of his sword. In terms of one-on-one duels in the arena, I dare say that Glover and Doyle, who have undergone strict knight training, can take on Miss Arund. Thales raised an eyebrow. D.D. Is he that fierce? Mallows did not answer. He only twitched the corner of his mouth. But if Doyle were to encounter Miss Arund in a battle of life and death in the wilderness, the watchman put down the sharpened blade and cleaned the crumbs on the table. I hope she'll be merciful and give him a quick death. That exaggerated. Thales frowned, but he rolled his eyes. What about you? You, against Miranda. Mallows took out the oil to protect his blade and smiled when he heard that. Miss Arund and I, it's 50-50. Wow, Thor, you have such a long face. Pardon me. Oh, my face is long. I mean, literally. Your Highness, I'm even more curious about what you mean by literally. Don't. You must know that curiosity killed Thor. Thank you for your teachings, Your Highness. I dare not forget it. Thales snorted mockingly. But in the next second, he suddenly said, Did you know he was coming? The question caught him off guard. Mallow's hand that was oiling the knife paused for a moment. Know what? Who's coming? What for? Mallows continued his work. His tone was calm and unperturbed. Tormund Mallows. Thales stared at the watchman in front of him who he could not fathom. He recalled the moment they first met and pondered the identity and position of this personal guard captain. He was the personal guard appointed by King Kessel, the watchman of the royal guards, and the person with the highest status by his side. But, Mallows, what kind of role would he ultimately play between Thales and the king? Attendant. Protector. Instructor. Watcher. Or, traitor. Thales stared at Mallows for a long time and finally shook his head, nothing. Then, do you know what I'm going to do now? Mallows' expression did not change. He was unperturbed. Sharpen the knife. You have to learn how to take care of your weapon. Looking at him and listening to his ambiguous answer, Thales could not help but sigh. He handed the oiled sentinel to Mallows for inspection. All right, Thor, let me ask you this, who can you trust in the current Starlake Guards? When he heard this nickname, Mallows sighed as well. He took the Imperial sword and helplessly checked Thales' maintenance. People I can trust. Why are you asking me this? Thales raised an eyebrow. Because I'm the one paying your salary. In the face of Thales' answer that changed the focus, Mallows clearly wanted to probe further into the question of whether he was the one paying his salary or his father, but the Duke's covetous gaze made him give up on the idea. The watchman raised his head and sighed. People I can trust. Your Highness, are you saying that I can trust that they will bow down and work hard without complaint, or that they will go through fire and water without hesitation? If it's the former. Mallows swung his long sword and his expression became stern. The Starlake Guards are carefully selected elites among the royal guards. Most of them have the title of royal knights, and they are all heroes. Nodding and bowing, working hard without complaint, every single one of them was a hero, relying on the guards under you whose defense is practically non-existent, and who can't even notice that the prince is being beaten up on the balcony. Thales nodded. His expression was rather thought-provoking. What about the latter? Oh, Mallows instantly regained his indifference. Toledo, Tang Axayan, and Sephanov from the Command Division are my old subordinates. Glover from the Vanguard Division is all right, maybe there's also Morgan. Morgan, that old soldier with a sour face all day long. Where did he serve in the past? Throat cutter guards from Blade Edge Hill. Yes, there aren't many times when he's not angry, but fortunately, he's not responsible for warming your bed. Warming my bed, really? In the Guard Division, I can pick out Bastia and Kursta. Doyle can also be considered a bonus. Doyle counts as well. Forgive me for being dull, but I can't tell if you're frightened or surprised. Other than that, Vincenzo Itariano from the Logistics Division can be used, and Francisco Capone from the Punishment Division. As he muttered these names, Thales scratched his chin. Among your old subordinates, Attendant Casso and the Mute, thank you, I know his name is Ralph, are both good. Willow is fine too, just don't let him do anything that requires him to use his brain. In fact, don't let him do anything other than throwing his life away. Just these few people. But we're going to take down Jade City. How reassuring. Thales counted with his fingers and was all smiles. That sounds great. Then, is there anyone who, what if, the kind of person who would raise the flag and rebel for their master, and isn't afraid of losing his head? Mallows inspected the Empire's ancient sword without raising his head. How much did you drink last night? Thales pretended not to hear him. He picked up a rag and began to wipe his hands. Very well, then bring all the people mentioned above, pick a few good-looking men, leave the guards behind, and get ready. We're going on a long journey. Mallows was not surprised by the words, going on a long journey. His tone was calm. As you wish. Not bringing anyone else. Maids. Chefs. Coachmen. Jadestar's private soldiers. And Nanny Valencia. It's not that I don't want to bring them. Recalling the nanny's cat-chasing stick, Thales exhaled, let me put it this way, if I want the people around me to be able to fight, use their brains, and run. Mallows nodded, then I suggest that we bring Oscar's son from the Vanguard Division. He's a southerner, and is more familiar with the climate and terrain. Thales frowned, I didn't say we're going to the south. Is that so? Then I must have remembered wrongly. Mallows weighed Sentinel in his hand, then I won't bring him. Thales stared at him, and after a few seconds, he sighed dejectedly. Forget it, you've better bring him along. Yes, Your Highness. Mallows twirled his sword and put Sentinel back into its scabbard, then, this martial arts lesson ends here. You've done a good job in maintaining your sword. I mean, the thickness is still a little uneven, but at least you're starting to get used to it. Thales stood up to receive his sword, but paused the moment his palm touched the scabbard. I realized that I missed a question, Tormund. Thank God. Mallows was glad that he did not call for Thor. I'll be happy to answer, Your Highness. Thales raised his head and looked straight at Mallows. Is this scabbard useful? Mallows frowned slightly. Thales pointed at the scabbard with Sentinel in it and said meaningfully, after all, since ancient times, swords cannot escape from their scabbards. Mallows was silent. His fingers stroked the scabbard. It looks like good leather, but you'll know when you use it. But Thales stared at him. Then I'll be straightforward. Among so many people in the Royal Guards, can I trust you, Tormund Mallows? Mallows' gaze sharpened. At that moment, the two people in the storeroom stood opposite each other. Both of them extended their right hands and held up the ancient sword, Sentinel, which lay horizontally in the storeroom. Mallows was expressionless. He was silent for a long time. Finally, he gently loosened the scabbard. Perhaps you should ask me in return, can you not trust me? Thales stared at him for a long time, let out a long sigh, and took Sentinel. I hope that your skill with the sword is as good as your skill with sarcasm, my dear head of the personal guards. Then you've underestimated me. Oh. Could it be that your swordsmanship is actually not bad, but you're hiding it? No, I mean, I haven't even used half of my skill with sarcasm. Thales pursed his lips and was speechless. Coincidentally, I also have a question to ask you. Mallows turned around, put away the short knife he had sharpened on the table, and inserted it into the scabbard in front of his chest. When you have a rendezvous with someone late at night, you don't like to go through the front door, and would rather climb over the window? At that moment, Thales, who was holding Sentinel, froze. Mallows narrowed his eyes and crossed his arms. I remember telling you that the air corridor will turn you into a meat pie one day. Thales widened his eyes and used all his strength to blink. I don't really understand. Oscar and Doyle were just sentries in the open, Mallows said calmly. When you met the Fortress Flower, Lady Cecile, Itariano from the command division was on a hidden sentry duty in a deeper area. He saw all of you clearly through his binoculars and immediately reported everything to me. F***CK. He really knows, he's not lying to me. Thales was exasperated in his heart. Mallows snorted softly. Wait a minute, Your Highness. You wouldn't be so stupid as to think that the defense of Star Lake Castle is useless, right? Who knows? Right, little dummy. Thales came to his senses and coughed. Of course not. Well, I know that all of you are nearby, so I'm not worried. But Thales thought of something, and his expression changed. Wait, so all of you must have seen Sonia attack me, but you did nothing. Attack? Mallows looked nonchalant. I'm sorry. You're so famous that we all thought that was your new trick. This pen is so annoying. Thales resisted the urge to roar. Why do I have this feeling that one day, I will be killed because of you? In fact, Your Highness, I think this should be my line. If it is, then that's great. Thales smiled sarcastically, waved his hand and turned around. All right, that's the arrangement here. Next, he would head to South Coast, so, Your Highness, in the future, all right, I got it. I won't climb walls anymore. I swear, the next time I want to play with women, I'll walk out of the front door openly, beating drums and gongs. I had Tang Xan pull the safety rope outside the window. Mallow's voice rang behind him. Next time before you climb walls, remember to tie it up first. Safety rope. Thales' waving hand stopped in midair. He turned around in a daze. Safety rope. Tormund, you. Mallow sighed softly, feeling helpless. We've been together for a while, Your Highness. I know I can't stop you from being silly, stupid, sick, and jinx. Thales' expression darkened. Alright, this pen is really annoying. Just like that day, I couldn't stop you from getting out of the carriage or rushing out recklessly to fight someone. But I don't want to order a coffin for you, Your Highness, or for me, or for anyone in this castle. Thales furrowed his eyebrows. So, before you go on this long journey, if you can be merciful and take pity on us. Mallows crossed his arms and pointed outside the window with his thumb. Safety rope. Mallows nodded lightly, turned around, and left. Staring at his back, Thales felt complicated for a moment, and did not know how to react. Thales lowered his head and looked at Sentinel in his hand. The size of the scabbard was just right for holding in his hand. It should be the same when I unsheath the sword. Thales took a deep breath. Hey! Thales called out to Mallows. After returning from Renaissance Palace, I haven't had the chance to say it, but, thank you, Thor. Damn it. Mallows sighed in his heart. Why did you change the way you addressed me? Thales walked forward and pursed his lips. I know, I'm a boss who's not easy to serve. I'm impulsive, childish, self-righteous, and always make stupid decisions to embarrass you. I'm almost terrible. You can remove the word almost. Mallow's expression did not change. This pen, Thales used his strength to flatten his eyebrows, which were scrunched together tightly. He took a deep breath and said, but thank you for helping me all this time. You've covered my back. Thales gulped. Fortunately, he did not blurt out, covered my back. Damn the Secret Intelligence Department. Mallows stared at him with puzzlement in his eyes. Thales tried hard to speak, especially the day I barged into Renaissance Palace. Thank you for leaving manpower and contingency plans for me, thank you for reminding me before I entered the palace, and, the matters after that, all these, and so on. Mallows furrowed his eyebrows. He looked at him as if he was looking at a lunatic. Thales forced out a smile. All right, it's not really suitable for me to say these sensational words. The Duke had a stiff smile on his face. He spread his hands, turned around mechanically, and left. Anyway, thank you. And the royal banquet just now, Mallows suddenly said. Thales stopped while he was in the middle of turning. What? Mallows exhaled through his nose. I have to add this to the list of things you should thank me for. Thales reacted and coughed awkwardly. Oh, yes, and this, thank you. And the days in Mindy's hole. Thales could only nod in agreement, and the days in Mindy's hole. And the day I came back from Western Desert. Thales closed his eyes and sighed, and the day I came back from Western Desert. And the management of Star Lake Castle. Thales repeated numbly, and the management of Star Lake Castle. And, that's enough from you. Thales could not take it anymore. How much longer do you have to count? Mallows smiled. You're welcome, Your Highness. This is part of my duty. His smile at that moment was very much like his usual polite and slightly sarcastic professional smile. It was very similar. I dare not accept your generous thanks, the watchman said faintly, turned around, and left. Thank you, my foot. Thales rolled his eyes at his back and swallowed the words, then I'll have to trouble you this time. He also threw the tiny bit of gratitude and a tiny bit of guilt towards the watchman into the bottom of Hell's River, and prayed that they would never be reincarnated. Mallows was very efficient. In just the next day, everyone knew that Prince Thales was about to leave for South Coast Hill to visit. The entire Star Lake Castle was thus in operation. Everyone was busy preparing for the Duke's long journey. Many people also began to be curious about the Duke's goal and mission. Unfortunately, such a top secret could only be known by the informant B, who was buried in the deepest part of Star Lake Castle. But Thales did not expect that after the news of the Duke's journey spread, the first person to come to him would be this person. Forget about the fortress flower. She also thinks highly of herself, and is as unapproachable as the rumors say. At the door of the Duke's room, Paul Bosdorf, the son of the Count of Black Lion, who was patrolling past, looked at the cold back of the person who entered the room and sighed, I was thinking of exchanging some pleasantries. Doyle, who was chewing on a sausage, closed the door and shook his head in denial. No. I'm not arrogant, and I'm not unapproachable. Trust me, no one is born with a sour face. Doyle swallowed a mouthful of sausage. Girls at this age are forced to be blunt and aloof. They are also the best and most direct form of protection, especially for women who have to work with men. Compared to being approachable and smiling, doing so can save a lot of unnecessary trouble. Paul frowned. How did you know? Doyle stroked his hair and made a cool pose. I wish I didn't know, but I can't help it. I'm gifted. Paul sneered and shook his head. You understand a girl's mind so well. It should be easier for you to please them and be popular. Paul stared at him. But why is it that when I arrived in the capital, everyone in the circle said that you are pompous and frivolous, so much so that you have a bad reputation? Even unmarried girls from good families stay away from you. When Doyle heard this, his smile froze. But in just 2 seconds, his expression changed. He turned around and winked at Paul. Hey, that's because you don't understand the good things about a mature girl. Paul was speechless. But, she's not married yet. Paul sank into deep thought. Coming to Prince Thales in private at this time is a little, Doyle's expression became solemn. Oh, you don't have to worry about that. Ha, I asked Waya before. It's true Waya. Oh, you don't know what true Waya is. It's okay, it's Waya anyway. First of all, Prince Thales and Doyle are old acquaintances. They fought together. Secondly, I believe you can see that she's not one of those rich young ladies who only have love in their minds." Doyle blinked. He chewed and swallowed the last mouthful of sausage. He was confident and resolute. "So, I'm sure of one thing. She and Prince Thales, meeting at this time, will definitely not talk about romance, marriage, or love." In the room, Miranda. Thales, who was copying the sunset scripture, making up for homework before class, was surprised and delighted when he saw the newcomer. In front of him, the cold swordswoman picked up the cup of tea on the desk that he had yet to drink without hesitation. "Madam." "What?" "It's Lady Arund," Miranda said coldly. "You're a prince, so you should address me appropriately." Thales' face darkened. "Really? Again? Isn't it enough for you to mess with me? You wanted to. All right, Honorable Madam Miranda Arund, the daughter of the Duke of the Northern Territory, the glorious descendant of the Snow Eagle family, the proud chief seat of the Pegasus of the Tower of Eradication, the Sword of Neverwinter of Cold Castle, the Flying Falcon in the Sky of Broken Dragon Fortress." Thales had no choice but to push the scripture aside and lean back. "Welcome, what can I do for you?" Miranda put down the teacup expressionlessly and stood in front of his desk like a sharp blade in the snow, cold and sharp. "Yes." Miranda stared at him with an indecipherable gaze. A few seconds later, she took a deep breath. Her gaze was firm. "Do you want to marry me?" With a bang, the legs of the chair shattered. Thales fell on his butt on the floor. Chapter 647. "Thank you, I'm fine, it's okay, it's just that I have to." "Damn it, this chair was just ordered not long ago." Thales held Miranda's hand and used it to struggle up from the broken chair. Miranda quietly watched the boy in front of her, perhaps he was a teenager now. She watched him pull the broken chair in a flustered manner with a rich expression on his face. This reminded her of the Bright Moon Temple 7 years ago, the little boy who stood on a wooden box covered in dirt, but still waved his young fists and roared, "Are you coming?" Miranda could not help but curl her lips. "All right, I give up. Next time, I'll have to ask them to find another carpenter." After a flurry, Thales could only raise his hands in resignation and announce the end of the chair. The moment the young duke raised his head, Miranda's smile disappeared. "Now, Your Highness, can we get back to the main topic?" "The main topic? What?" "Oh, yes, that's right. So what we were talking about just now is, do you want to marry me?" When he thought of this, Thales' expression became solemn, and his voice deepened. "Are you joking with me, Madam Miranda Arund?" Marry Miranda. It felt like the bargaining chip he used to threaten others had come true. In the next second, he seemed to see Raphael Lindbergh appear in front of him. His eyes were glowing red, and he sneered maliciously. This made Thales' expression tense. In the face of the tense Duke, Miranda's expression remained the same, and she was as calm as ever. "No, this is not a joke. Even if it is, it's not funny. Looks like you know it too." At that moment, countless thoughts flashed through Thales' mind, including, "She's working with that barren bone boy to take revenge on me." He took a deep breath and straightened his back. "All right, if it's not a joke, then my suggestion is, I'll look for Grandmother Valencia and Mallows, and maybe Stone from the Logistics Division. We have to hold a meeting to discuss the livelihood issues around Star Lake Castle, especially the quality supervision of traditional handicraft products. We'll also deal with this chair, or what's left of it." Miranda did not speak. "As for you, Madam Arund from the standing military camp of Broken Dragon Fortress, as a typical example to promote the closeness between the army and the people and the Central Northern Territory, go to the kitchen and order a cup of mate tea, then." Thales waved his hand and pointed resolutely at the door. "Come find me when you're sober." What a joke, I'm in an important position with heavy responsibilities on my shoulders. I have to attend to a myriad of affairs every day, not to mention the end of the world and the pain in my tailbone, but Miranda did not leave. Instead, she scrutinized Thales from head to toe, as if she was inspecting goods. But you haven't answered me. The swordswoman's tone was cold, and her gaze was aggressive. You, Thales Jadestar, do you want to be my husband? Fuck me, no, no, no. Thales took a deep breath and kept reminding himself that he was now the Duke of Star Lake. He had to maintain his manners and grace, and pay attention to the rhythm of his speech. I'll King be your sister. Miranda was stunned and did not understand. But in the next second, Thales grabbed the swordswoman's arm and pulled her to the side. Are you crazy? Thales lowered his voice and looked at the door warily. I'll marry you. Do you know that saying this will cause a huge uproar? Jadestar and Arund, Renaissance Palace and the Northern Territory, the relationship between them, do you know what will happen to the people outside if they hear what you say here? Do you know who is in charge of collecting and handling information and public opinion in the kingdom's secret department? Miranda looked at him. Her expression did not change, but she slowly loosened her grip on the hilt of her sword. You're the same as before, Your Highness, the swordswoman replied with a cold snort. Once you're nervous, you're especially talkative, and you say crazy things that no one else can understand. I'm nervous. I'm talkative. That's because you haven't seen the prince's ass. Thales' expression was originally cold, but when he looked at Miranda, he remembered how they went through life and death together, especially when he remembered her life experience and her father's misfortune. He could not help but sigh. All right. Thales pulled her to the window, as far away from the door as possible. Then, he exhaled impatiently. Tell me, what happened? Is it the anniversary of our breakup, or is it a revenge affair? Are you in such a hurry to find a new lover? Miranda stared at him carefully and frowned. Hey! Don't tell me it's Mr. Raphael Lindbergh who secretly went to Red Street Market to flirt. Thales clapped his hands and said sarcastically with great comfort, in the end, he left behind records and witnesses, and you found out that you wanted to break up. When she saw Thales deliberately changing the topic with another name, Miranda snorted coldly. This has nothing to do with him. Thales shrugged. Of course. Sorry, it's my fault. I forgot that you're an independent girl, so no matter what happens, you won't use other people's mistakes, especially your ex-boyfriends, to punish yourself, and you won't trouble others. But Miranda's expression turned cold. She took out a letter and a portrait from her bag and stuffed them into Thales' arms. It has something to do with you. Thales was stunned. He lowered his head and opened the letter in his arms. This is a greeting letter from you personally. Miranda said disdainfully. Not only did the letter describe in detail the 700 years of friendship between the Jadestar and Arund families, it also included many people who were of equal social status and were a match made in heaven. It also praised my family's reputation, appearance, and achievements. It even kindly inquired about my health and mental state. Finally, it quoted an ancient love poem to express your longing for me and lamented the loneliness of being single for so many years. It also asked for a recent portrait of me in the letter. At that moment, Thales froze on the spot. His previous endless dignity and coldness instantly turned into embarrassment and embarrassment. Well, maybe it's just a daily. Miranda ignored him and continued to speak. Scholar Alpissoni said that according to the kingdom's tradition, this is in fact a marriage notice. Thales gulped unnaturally. Actually, it's not that. Then, of course, Lord Bustamante removed all the polite words and rhetoric and helped me summarize a sentence. Miranda glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. Do you want a mate? It's really my problem. Thales put down the letter with an expressionless face. The room became completely quiet. Kessel Jadestar, I will never forgive you. My dear Lady Arund. Thales tried hard to ignore the god of war who was unleashing his demonic energy to destroy the world in his mind. He suppressed the urge to barge into Renaissance Palace again and forced a smile. He was gentle and kind. If I say that this is my father's idea, and I had no prior knowledge of this thing, oh, it really drew me pretty well, would you believe me? Your father's idea? Miranda stared at him. Her sharp gaze seemed to see through more things. After a while, she untied her sword, supported herself with one hand, and sat on the windowsill. I believe you. Thales sighed in relief. At least Raphael, whose eyes were glowing red, disappeared from the bottom of his heart. Since the misunderstanding has been resolved. I am actually preparing to go on a long journey. Why don't we talk about it later? So, Thales Jadestar, Miranda spoke again. This time, she was extremely serious. Do you want me to be your queen? Thales paused again. **T, Thales sighed. He was no longer as awe-inspiring as before. He could only smile helplessly. You asked this question before. I did not, Miranda said coldly. They are different questions. Thales' smile disappeared. It seemed that at this moment, everything was different. Which part is different? Thales leaned back and sat on the desk. Is it mine, or queen? Miranda sized him up for a while before she snorted and shook her head. It's a pity. If our marriage was real, it could solve many problems, from the right to rule to the right to inherit. Thales fell silent. It can solve many problems, the key is, what problems? You don't want to sit there. Thales looked at Miranda, who was leaning against the windowsill. He said gloomily, when the sun is at its hottest, a few cats are used to coming to my study to cool off. The food and water in those bowls are prepared to feed them, so that they won't push their luck and enter my room. Cats. Miranda frowned and saw a few bowls by the window. Thales crossed his arms and sighed. If they find out that their old place has been occupied, they, especially that cunning old black cat, will be unhappy. Then they will start to give me a headache. Miranda was silent for a moment. It's okay. That's why I'm carrying a sword. Thales furrowed his eyebrows. Sword. Isn't this a little too cruel? Will it be crueler than the problem you encountered at the royal banquet? What happened? Thales took a deep breath and said seriously, well, Madame Arund, what I just said was not a political metaphor, but a literal meaning. There will really be cats wandering around here. Miranda was stunned. After this interlude, the two of them once again fell into silence. Miranda spoke again. By the way, I went to the Sunset Temple a while ago and met Aunt Licia. Licia, who? Miranda ignored Thales. Priestess Meljen was there as well. For the sake of your reputation, they asked me to bring some words that were not convenient to say to the prince directly. Priestess Meljen, some words to say to the prince. Thales was shocked. I'm really writing. The prince subconsciously pointed at the copy of the theology lesson on the table. Tell her that she can hand it in tomorrow. Not that. Miranda glanced at him in disdain. She said seriously, Priestess Meljen said that the period for the internal investigation of the temple is almost here. If you show some understanding to Sister Nia and don't want her to be so anxious that she has to rummage through chests and cabinets every day, quickly return the 3 books that were stolen from the Forbidden Book area. Forbidden Book area, stolen. Thales originally heaved a sigh of relief, but his smile froze on his face. One of them is Arch C's City Enlightenment Collection, and the other is Hidden Records of Exorcism. The last one is, Miranda took out a note. High Priestess Petruzzelli's top secret notes. Wait, Petruzzelli, Isn't he the Sunset High Priestess during the era of the Ascension King? The one who presided over the killing of children as an offering to the gods. Thank you. Thales snatched the note and forced a smile. I know now. Miranda pursed her lips. Aunt Licia also said that if you want to borrow some books next time, you don't have to be a thief. You can just say it directly. Don't worry, she won't tell your father. Thales felt as if his face was burning. The atmosphere became a little awkward. Then, Miranda spoke to break the silence. I heard from Waya that you are going to the south for an inspection. Which Waya? Oh, you mean that Waya. Thales nodded and sighed slightly. Yes, it's obvious that everyone is busy with their work. Since even someone like me, who is known to be unsuitable for a house and home, has received it. I guess that quite a number of suzerains in the south have also received your, do you want to mate? Quite a number of suzerains in the south. Thales looked as if he had just eaten a fly. Regarding this, I cannot disobey my father's orders, he said sarcastically. And the king's orders cannot be changed. Miranda's voice was cold, and it made Thales' heart tremble. What is she trying to say? Thales said seriously, listen, Miranda, I'm sorry, it's Madame Arund. I'm very grateful that you came to see me, and I'm also very sorry that my matters have caused you inconvenience, but if there's nothing else, enough, I don't want to beat around the bush with you anymore. Miranda cut him off directly, and her next sentence made Thales stunned. I'm here to help you. Help me. Please forgive me, I don't quite understand. Miranda glanced at him, and it was just a glance, as if she understood everything. But it made Thales very anxious. Stop pretending. You are definitely not going to the south for a blind date, the swordswoman said with certainty. Based on your habits, everywhere you go, the capital, the fortress, Dragon Cloud City, Western Desert, will not be peaceful. Ha! Thales was stunned at first, and then he scratched the chair indignantly. Star Lake Castle is very peaceful. Only a few rats died. At most, I'll add 2 more chairs. But Miranda ignored him. And no matter what kind of shady business you want to do that is inconvenient to talk about, you need trustworthy and competent people. It would be best if they are acquaintances who have worked with you before, and have even gone through thick and thin with you. So, I'll go with you on this journey. Shady business that is inconvenient to talk about, damn it, what does she know? At that moment, Thales and Miranda's eyes met. Since you don't like to beat around the bush, Madame Arund, Thales said doubtfully, I know that our experience in Dragon Cloud City is unforgettable, but our friendship doesn't seem to be so good that we can help each other from afar. Miranda did not answer immediately, but stared at him. Her eyes were different from the others. They were calm, cold, sharp, and had a vague sense of alienation. Right. The Duke suddenly remembered that although the lady in front of him was from Constellation, Arund was from Northland. Most of the time, Thales could not help but forget this, and treated her more as a typical Empire bigwig. Finally, Miranda spoke softly. If you really want a reason, Cohen told me that the prince is in a difficult situation and urgently needs help, but unfortunately, he does not have enough people around him. Or to quote his own words, they are all idiots. Cohen. Thales was stunned when he heard this. Did he ask Miranda to come? He subconsciously asked what was on his mind. How is he recently? Pretty good, Miranda said in a low voice. First, he was transferred from the Highway Administration Maintenance Department to the Archives Management Department, and his daily work changed from sweeping to drinking tea, yes, thanks to me. Thales felt a little guilty. Maybe I should pull some strings and transfer him to Star Lake Fort as compensation. Until he tidied up the files without rest and found a lot of dubious old files, which involved a large number of retired police officers and magistrates who were enjoying their old age, and even quite a few former high-ranking officials. His superior had no choice but to transfer him to the police academy under the Academy of Knights to train reserve police officers. After a second of careful consideration, Thales decided to let Cohen continue to train in the police station. I understand. A strange feeling surged in Thales' heart. I have to say, I am very grateful and honored, but you are Madame Sonia's right-hand man and a strong fighter. If I abduct you, she will not, she will, Miranda interrupted him. Madam, she will understand. She understands better than anyone else. Miranda stared out the window. Thales paused for a second. Are you serious? You want to serve me? I don't have the habit of lying. So you are not good at lying, at least not as good as I thought. In that second, Miranda's gaze turned fierce. The Duke of Starlake took a deep breath and felt the color in the room turn darker. You are not here because of Cohen's request. Thales straightened his posture and looked at her seriously. It's not that he doesn't want to help me, but even if that blockhead has 20 brains, he will not think of saying that the prince is in a difficult situation and needs help. Miranda's frown deepened. 7 years ago in Dragon Cloud City, you did not manage to deceive child Vlad with this soaring eagle. The Duke of Star Lake looked at her coldly. 7 years later, you will not be able to deceive me either. So, I want to ask you one more time, and it will be the last time. There was a chill in Thales' words. Madame Arund, why did you come here to help me? Miranda leaned against the window and did not say a word. She was like a winter plum flower facing the wind and snow. But Thales was also very patient. Finally, the swordswoman spoke expressionlessly. Because I am tired of it. Tired of what? Miranda raised her head suddenly. Waiting, she said coldly. I am tired of waiting for a chance to change, tired of going with the flow. I am tired of being a happy, pitiful, innocent, and pitiful woman who is content with the status quo and has no self-awareness. Just like the past 20 years. Miranda did not shy away and met the prince's eyes. Happy, pitiful, innocent, content with the status quo, these words, Thales slowly furrowed his brows. What are you talking about? Miranda let out a cold laugh. Everything. She turned her head and looked at Lake of Stars under the sunlight. 7 years ago, my father was imprisoned for the crime of harming a foreign politician, that unfortunate Prince of Ekstet. But everyone in the circle knew that Iron Eagle Valorun's crimes were far more than that. He had ulterior motives, colluded with foreign enemies, and committed the shocking crime of treason. He nearly caused the people of the Northern Territory to be plunged into misery and suffering, and caused the kingdom to be doomed eternally. His debt of sin was great, and he could not be punished. Thales recalled the Hall of Stars 7 years ago. He remembered the scene of the courtiers pressuring the prince to abdicate when the flames of war were about to descend. He did not speak. Miranda's words became more oppressive. The Arund family suffered a blow, and their prestige was swept to the ground. Their reputation was ruined, and they were ridiculed countless times over the past 7 years. The forces and families who were once on good terms with Cold Castle fought to keep their distance and draw a clear line between them. She said dejectedly, the truth is, our family's name has gradually faded, and the Northern Territory no longer looks up to the White Eagle at the top of Winter Summit. Thales spoke softly, but there was a faint uneasiness in his heart. I'm very sorry. There's no need for that, Miranda denied flatly. Since we've done it, we should bear the consequences. This is what we deserve. Thales looked at her, but he remembered the Archdukes of Ekstet who fought against each other in heroic Spirit Palace in another country. So this is why you came to me, and even wanted to serve me. You want to borrow the Duke of Starlake's power, and the glory of the White Eagle? Miranda nodded, but then shook her head. More than that. Her gaze froze. You know what else he did. Him. Him. For some reason, Thales understood that she was not talking about Duke Val. Miranda left the windowsill and walked slowly towards Thales. Asterisk thud. Asterisk her voice was steady, but her words were piercing. He kept my father in prison for 7 years, even though he deserved it. He did not take his life, nor did he strip him of his title and status. At the same time, he showed the king's mercy and Renaissance palace's cruelty. Asterisk thud. Asterisk, he never explicitly stated that I, a female first heir, was the legitimate heir. Similarly, he did not acknowledge that the other Arun branches had the right to replace me. He allowed us to have disputes everywhere and caused dissension in the family. Asterisk thud. Asterisk the swordswoman from the Arun family's footsteps seemed to have a certain rhythm. With every step she took, her imposing manner increased, and it complemented her words. He never mentioned or approved my marriage. He even rejected the suggestions of those with ulterior motives. He made me gradually become the fruit of power in Northland. The more it was delayed, the more tempting it would be for others to pluck it. Asterisk thud. Asterisk, he also incited Zamanto and Fries and gave them small favors to boost their ambitions. He made these two families in the Northern Territory, who were second only to the Arun family, think that they could replace Cold Castle's position in front of Renaissance Palace. Asterisk thud. Asterisk Thales felt the sin of Hell's river stirring. A strong premonition forced him to take a deep breath and cut her off. The Northern Territory is geographically crucial, and the people there are fierce. When Renaissance Palace handles related matters, they naturally need to be cautious. That's right. Miranda said sharply and cut him off. The Northern Territory has a special status. There are many traditions that are different from those in the kingdom. One of them is that the suzerains of Northland do not have to follow the Elam law system of inheritance of the eldest son. They can even follow the legacy of Northland and choose the best to inherit the legacy. Or in the words of the people in the land, they are barbaric and backward. Legacy of Northland. Thales suddenly thought of Black Sand region and how Chapman Lampard obtained the Archduke's position. But I know his plans. Miranda changed the topic, and her tone was piercingly cold. You know it too. He used the difference in inheritance laws and disputes, as well as my gender to keep me, the Arun family, and the entire Northern Territory in suspense. So that he could continue the story of Blade Edge Hill. In the name of the royal family, he would carry out his laws in the Northern Territory, spread his authority, convey his will, and appoint officials who were close to the royal family. Until the rebellious Cold Castle did as he wished and became the second northern field camp of Renaissance Palace after Broken Dragon Fortress. Miranda finally stopped in front of Thales. She said airily, until the proud white eagle at the top of Winter Summit became a parrot in a pet bird cage. Thales could not help but let out a long sigh. So now, I, Miranda Arund, the daughter of a duke, have become a sacrifice for the kingdom, an abandoned child of history, and an obstacle to the Northern Territory. My status is neither high nor low, my authority is undecided, and my future is dark and uncertain. Miranda snorted coldly. As expected of a father and son. Just like you, he knows how to make use of women, especially women who are vulnerable, right? Thales' gaze shifted. He resisted the urge to retort, but he could not stop his mood from sinking. So, Miranda, you came here for, at that moment, Thales only felt a deep sense of sorrow. And I am just, tired of it, Miranda said expressionlessly. Thales sighed. So you asked me just now if I want you to be my queen. You are looking for a way out. Miranda's expression darkened. She nodded. Yes, this is indeed the fastest and most effortless way to solve the problem. But then her gaze turned sharp. But I believe that you are not so stupid and short-sighted that you only see my value as a wife and mother." As he listened to her words, Thales remembered his brief encounter with the shackled Duke of the Northern Territory, Iron Eagle Valorund, at the royal banquet. "Please do me another favor, don't marry her. If you have no choice but to marry her, don't plant a seed in her belly." "Duke Val, you foresaw this. You knew this would happen, didn't you? You know your daughter. You know that she is an Arund. She is the White Eagle of the Northern Territory. Under the day before the bitter cold winter, she may temporarily retreat, but she will not remain mute for long, much less bow her head forever." "So, what do you want?" Thales asked softly. What do I want?" Miranda repeated this sentence. She slowly lowered her body and met Thales' eyes. "It's very simple. I am a descendant of the White Eagle Arund. What flows in my veins is the cruel blood of the first marshal under the King of Renaissance, wretched Eagle Nolaner Arund." She said in a low voice, "I went back and forth between Cold Castle and Broken Dragon Fortress. I fought against the Northland barbarians for a total of 9 years. All the generals, captains, soldiers, messengers, cooks, porters, and even the prostitutes in the villages outside the fortress know me." Miranda's expression became more determined. "I am also the subordinate and comrade of the fortress flower. Be it fame, ability, status, experience, or familiarity with the Northern Territory, I am the best and strongest replacement and successor for the northern barrier of the kingdom." In this second, Miranda's gaze was as sharp as a knife. "In the entire kingdom, no one is more deserving of the title of the Duke of the Northern Territory than me." Her voice was as cold as ice. "No one is more qualified than me to rule that ancient land." Her words were as heavy as a mountain. "No one can use any reason to stop me from defending or even taking back what belongs to me." Thales did not speak. At that moment, he was in a daze, as if he had returned to the small Ballard room. "To defeat them, Your Majesty, you must change your strategy. You need them to jump out, stand out, and shine." Now, they jumped out. Thales' heart trembled. He slowly raised his head and met Miranda's determined expression. "This day has come so quickly." At this moment, the Gertoxa was in his front pocket, as light as a feather. "And I will give you unexpected great help you see through them, disintegrate them, and finally destroy them." That night, when he reached an agreement with King Kessel, Thales knew the price of doing so. Or rather, he thought he knew. He thought, "Now, what do you think?" As he pondered, the daughter of the Arund family stared at him. "Polaris." Chapter 648. Thales was silent for a long time. A myriad of thoughts ran through his mind. Some of them were memories of his adventures with Miranda in Dragon Cloud City, and some were related to the Covenant Bone Ring. In the end, he sighed and turned away from Miranda's burning gaze. He stepped over the chair that had died of old age and sat on the desk. If Grandmother Valencia was here, she would probably reprimand the Duke for his indecent behavior with a straight face. But she was not here. Fortunately, she was not here. "So, Madame Arund, you came to me for title, land, and power." Thales sat on the desk and stroked the scar on his left palm in a daze. Miranda did not move. She only watched the Duke of Star Lake from afar, who was immersed in his own thoughts. "I have to say, this is really, wow, impressive." Thales made up his mind. He took a deep breath, but unfortunately, "Forgive me for refusing, strange," Miranda interrupted him. Thales frowned and looked up. The daughter of the Arund family spoke softly. "Isn't it only natural for the heir of a duke's family to work hard for the sake of titles, land, and power?" Thales could not help but frown and look up. Miranda shook her head and said, "Then why did you say it was impressive when it came to me?" As if this is something rare, something worth writing about. Thales was stunned and did not react. What? No, I didn't think that way. Miranda sneered. If I were a male heir, would you still say, as the son of a duke, you actually want title, land, and power? Wow, that's really impressive. Thales was even more stunned. But Miranda took a step forward and said aggressively, why? Is it that I or someone like me is not worthy, not suitable, or unable, or is it that I don't have the ambition to fight for power, and shouldn't be so impressive, Duke Thales? What? Thales, who was a little dumbfounded by her rebuke, took a deep breath. Please don't misunderstand, Madame Arund. I mean no harm. The young man tried to ease the conversation. I don't mean to look down on you. It's just a polite remark. This time, Miranda stared at him for a long time, as if she wanted to dig out the thoughts behind his eyes. It was only when Thales felt embarrassed and could not help but cough to remind her that she averted her gaze. I know. Miranda's voice dropped, no longer aggressive. I know you mean no harm, Your Highness. Through the feedback from Hell's senses, Thales vaguely felt that at that moment, she was a little gloomy and depressed. At most, you'll feel nothing. You'll just be used to it. You won't feel anything strange. You'll only think that it's a normal sentence. You'll even think that I'm being too sensitive. Miranda gazed at the star lake, which had become languid and numb from the warm summer breeze, and the waves that were unable to calm down. But this is the problem. The cold light in her eyes slowly froze. This is why I had to come here. The moment he finished speaking, Thales looked confused. But for some reason, when he looked at Miranda's profile, he felt that the study was eerily quiet. Madame Arund, I really didn't. Thales wanted to explain more, but he paused and changed his words. I'm very sorry, madam. If I said something wrong or expressed the wrong attitude in a way that I didn't realize, then I apologize to you. Really? Miranda was silent like a statue for a long time before she slowly turned her head around. She curled the corners of her lips at Thales and smiled faintly. That smile was very natural and bright. Even the sunlight behind her could not cover it. This made Thales a little dazed. She's beautiful, isn't she? A voice in his heart reminded him softly. That smile is like the first sprout on the peak of a snow-capped mountain when the snow melts in early spring. But such a feeling disappeared in a flash. Just like that smile, fragile and fragile. To be fair, you shouldn't be the one to apologize. The swordswoman became expressionless again, as if she had never smiled before. This brought Thales back to reality. But it's also fair to say that I accept your apology. Thales was stunned again. The Duke snapped out of his daze. He quickly coughed and changed the topic. So, madam, do you want to join me and tour the south with me? Let everyone see that you've chosen your side and stand under the Duke of Star Lake, the future king, so that you can accumulate experience and fame to invest in your future. Miranda thought for a while and crossed her arms. No, not to join you. She raised her index finger gently and pointed at Thales. But to help you. Thales frowned. As your supporter. Miranda's eyes sparkled. Not as a follower. Not as a follower, but as a help. Not as a follower, but as a supporter. As he mulled over her words, Thales also crossed his arms with a serious expression. A few seconds later, he took a deep breath. Dear Madame Arund. Thales' voice was a little hoarse. You know, after Dragon Cloud City, although I haven't contacted you much, it's not that you haven't contacted me much, it's that you haven't contacted me at all, Miranda suddenly said. Thales was instantly rendered speechless. Miranda sneered. In comparison, I have at least met Waya a few times over the past 7 years. Yes, that Waya. Although I don't know how many Wayas there are here, or if everyone is a Waya. If only Mother Valencia was here. Pay attention to your etiquette, child. When the Duke speaks, shut up. She would definitely say that. She waved the pointer in her hand. All right. Thales suppressed his displeasure at being interrupted and continued. This may sound hypocritical, but madam, I cherish the experience of that night in Dragon's Blood very much. I have always treated you as an old friend, a comrade who has gone through thick and thin with me. Miranda nodded slightly. It is indeed hypocritical. Thales sighed. So, whether you can serve under me or not is not something that Sonia and I can decide. And my father, His Majesty, he is a complete bastard, Miranda interrupted him again. But this time, huh? Thales was stunned when he heard that, and then he was shocked. What? Who's the bastard? Miranda sneered, and her words were unscrupulous. Isn't that so? As a father, he used you as a bargaining chip to swindle others, a breeding pig for mating. For this reason, he could disregard your wishes and ignore your safety. He could pick up your little dick and show it off to the whole kingdom, as long as it could bring him the slightest benefit, whether it was 7 years ago or 7 years later. She picked up the greeting letter and slammed it on the table. Oh, sunset. Thales took a deep breath. If Mother Valencia is here. No, thank goodness she's not. Thales could only keep a straight face and say nothing, regardless of his status or position. And no matter how badly you get beaten up, you can only say good things about him. A father's love is like a mountain, there will be sweets after the beating, Miranda mocked. Thales took a deep breath. Damn it. He thought that he was the most daring person in the kingdom to scold the Iron Hand King. In the end, for the sake of the past, I'll pretend that I didn't hear this. Thales spoke in a low voice, without looking at her. And you, Madame Arund, perhaps you should know your place, and show due respect to His Majesty. Miranda shook her head and snorted. She glanced sideways at Thales, as if she was looking at the most impossible thing. What about you, as the king's son, Thales Jadestar, why didn't you know your place, and show due respect? Thales was stunned. On the contrary, you were unscrupulous, impulsive, reckless, trespassing the Forbidden Palace, leading the rebellion, threatening the king with death, and forcing him to compromise. Why? Just for the so-called justice of a mere Western Desert squire. At that moment, Thales raised his head abruptly. But Miranda did not dodge. She stared back at Thales, as if she was the one in charge of the conversation. Leading the rebellion, threatening the king with death, Western Desert squire, all right, maybe the news from that day can't be suppressed, but the details, Madame Arund, the Duke said with a frown and a warning tone, rumors are not to be trusted. The sound of the guards changing shifts came from outside the window. Your Highness, Miranda's eyes were as sharp as knives, and she said tit for tat, it's not enough to deceive yourself. At that moment, the air in the study seemed to have frozen. One of them was sitting, and the other was standing. One of them had a gloomy expression, and her attitude was cold, while the other's gaze was sharp, and she pressed forward. But just when the situation was extremely tense, Thales' gaze shifted. Cohen Caribbean. He stared at Miranda. Did that guy tell you these things? Hearing this name, Miranda hesitated for a moment, then she snorted and shook her head. Don't worry, Cohen fulfilled his promise and kept his mouth shut. He denied everything that he should deny. Thales was stunned at first, then he understood and sighed. In other words, his denial is equivalent to admitting to everything that he should not have admitted to. Yes, something along the lines of, I didn't lend my sword to the prince, nor did I follow him into Renaissance Palace, and I'm not stupid enough to rebel, let alone see some brat threaten his father with suicide, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the previous royal banquet. So, Miranda, do you understand? As for the rest, with Miranda's brain, it was not a problem to deduce the truth. Miranda was silent for a while, as if she wanted to defend her friend, but in the end, she understood that it was useless. She could only sigh. We all know him. Thales could only sigh softly. The next time we meet, I want to beat him up. The Duke said helplessly. Then you have to queue up, Miranda pursed her lips. When she said this, Thales and Miranda could not help but look at each other and smile. It seemed that this was one of the few areas where they could find common ground. But this also made Thales sigh in his heart. His desperate gamble in Renaissance Palace had a far greater impact than he imagined. No, if that's the case, I can't bring Miranda along when I'm in danger. Together, Thales raised his head and became serious. You chose to join my team and pledge your loyalty to me, or as you said, to help me and support me. But do you know the price of doing so? Miranda chuckled softly. Of course. The daughter of the Arund family spread her hands and looked around. It's the same treatment you received after you were exiled by the king. Thales closed his eyes gently. No, you don't know, girl. You're far from it. Whether you succeed or fail, if you're not careful and make the slightest mistake, you may be overturned by the warhorse and abandoned by the carriage. Not only will you never be able to be crowned, you will also be surrounded by enemies everywhere you look. Even your life will be in danger. Thales tried hard to shake off King Kessel's words and tried again. I understand your current predicament and indignation, and I'm honored that you chose me as your answer. But please believe me, it's not that I don't want to help you, it's just that, you have a better way out than Starlake Castle. But Miranda shook her head. I used to think that Broken Dragon Fortress was the way out. My best role model is there, isn't it? As long as I stay by Officer Sonia's side, learn her military strategy, inherit her reputation, shoulder her responsibilities, prove to the kingdom that I have the ability to wield the sword, prove that I am indispensable to ruling the Northern Territory, I can, but I was wrong. A dark cloud floated across the sky and blocked the sun. The ripples on the star lake dimmed, leaving behind only a deep darkness. Miranda's expression became solemn. So, this is a deal. Thales crooked his finger. I took your suggestion and only kept the most utilitarian part. With a heart full of discomfort, he brazenly sized up Miranda. Does this make you feel better, my dear Mira? Mira. Miranda tensed up. This is clearly a nickname that is intimate, but it sounds, even Cohen does not dare to call me that, she said coldly. Thales snorted, and his gaze immediately turned cold. So, I am not Cohen, but your master. If you want to stay, you better get used to it as soon as possible, Lady Mira. Miranda stared at Thales and furrowed her brows tightly. She was silent for a long time. And Thales was also happy with the peace and quiet. He did not rush her. A few seconds later, Miranda unclenched her fists and smiled unexpectedly. Very good, I like deals. The swordswoman licked her chapped lips, as if she was licking the blood of her prey. It makes everything direct, simple, naked, and bloody. Thales was stunned at first, but then he smiled as well. You know, I was thinking that if Raphael knew about our conversation right now, Thales shook his head and said sarcastically, he would definitely kill me. Then, he, or anyone else, would have to step over my longsword first. Miranda said coldly. Or a corpse. The two people in the study looked at each other, as if they were swords clashing. This is the first benefit that my loyalty has brought you, Your Excellency. Thales looked at her expression and was silent for a moment. Yes, your martial arts skills are not bad. The Duke saw her raise her eyebrows and could not help but change his words. In fact, they are quite good. But he immediately sneered in disdain. But do not forget, the Star Lake Guards are elites carefully selected from the Royal Guards. Most of them have the title of Royal Knights, and they are all heroes. Thales spoke as usual. His face was not red, and he was not out of breath. I do not lack elites under my command. There are people in Star Lake Castle who are on par with you, or even better than you. Somewhere in the castle, a guard captain sneezed violently. This damn cat fur. Miranda did not answer, but her expression was solemn. Thales straightened his back and sneered. And they can go through fire and water for me without hesitation. Even if they want to rebel, they will not even bat an eyelid. Miranda swallowed hard. Thales stared at his opponent, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. My dear Mira, if you want to participate in the game, you have to pay more. More. Chapter 649. Miranda was silent for a long time, but her gaze never left the Duke of Star Lake, as though she was still getting used to Thales's behavior. You said that you have no lack of elites under your command, and that you're even better than me. A few seconds later, Miranda said disdainfully, but as far as I know, that duel of 2 against 1, those were the weakest 2 in the Star Lake Guards. Thales interrupted her firmly to prevent her from digging up his past. At the same time, he felt sorry for Ness and Bastia. Others aside, my personal guard captain, Lord Tormund Mallows, also known as the Sharp Blade of Terror, can suppress both of them with one hand. Achoo, there's more and more cat hair. Only an idiot would come up with this idea of raising a cat and limiting a mouse. Mallows, who was inspecting the supplies, said unhappily. In the study, Thales sneezed softly and rubbed his nose. Terror, Sharp Blade. Miranda repeated the word, a puzzled look on her face. Thales' expression was solemn. That is Lord Mallow's nickname. All the Northlanders, no, all the Constellations. What I mean is, all the enemies who have suffered losses in his hands, whether it is the Extensions or the Constellations, call him that behind his back. Miranda furrowed her brows. Thales sneered. A hint, don't mention it to his face. Mallows doesn't like this nickname, he'd rather die than admit it. Miranda thought about something, her expression gradually turning solemn. The Mallows family was once part of the 7 Jade Star attendants, nicknamed Razor, I know that. But Sharp Blade of Terror. In that case, Lord Mallows is skilled in swords and sabers? Or short-range daggers? Thales had to cough more frequently. Well, why don't you spar with him some other day? But let me warn you in advance, as my most trusted guard captain, Lord Mallow's martial arts skills are unfathomable. Even the most powerful and terrifying powerhouse in the world would only have a 50-50 chance of winning if they were to go against him. Why do I feel like you're exaggerating? No, I'm just emphasizing that the martial arts skills you're so proud of are not rare here. Hearing this, Miranda was silent for a while, but she quickly continued. Not just martial arts. Considering the discord between you and Duke Sayan, Your Highness, no matter what your purpose in going to Jade City is, you will definitely be hindered in all aspects. It will not be as smooth as going to the capital or Dragon Cloud City. Thales remained silent. Actually, things did not go very smoothly in the capital and Dragon Cloud City either. But she was right. His goal in going to Jadeite City was not only dangerous, but it was also very tricky. He needed more capable people. And we worked together in Dragon Cloud City. You know what I'm capable of other than using a sword. Miranda's gaze became shrewd. There are some difficult problems that can be solved by me. This is an unprecedentedly obvious signal, and it is also an important bargaining chip for you to gather your people and power again after you were exiled by the king out of jealousy. Make a comeback. You make it sound like I've ever made a comeback. Thales fell into deep thought. Based on this alone, my value to you is greater than everyone in this castle. And I have yet to mention the reputation and experience I have accumulated in Broken Dragon Fortress over the years. Thales was silent for a while. I admit that what you said is not without reason. The Duke of Star Lake curled his lips and shook his head. But there are quite a few flaws. For example, you may not be able to inherit your father's position. Miranda's expression tensed. Thales smiled. A long time ago, there was a little Loli, the old witch was the same. We agreed that she would help me ascend to the throne, and I would help her regain her power. Thales said with a nostalgic expression. But the cooperation broke down, she betrayed me. Miranda's gaze shifted. For many years, I resented her for breaking her promise, but it was only after I discussed it with Old Wu, with my teacher, that I understood that the cooperation was destined to fail. Miranda sensed the coldness in Thales' words, and she could not help but shudder. Thales sneered and placed his hands on the desk. You see, I have to ascend to the throne first before I have the strength to help her regain her power, but she has to regain her power first before she has the strength to help me ascend to the throne. The prince's gaze turned cold. With this, aren't we just two empty promises that act as guarantees for each other? It all depends on which side can't hold themselves back first, and whose credibility goes bankrupt first. Miranda tensed up. At that moment, the prince's gaze seemed to be sharp, and it made the Pegasus music in her body start to circulate. Martial arts, brains, and your so-called illusory status, I do not lack any of them. Thales exhaled and narrowed his eyes. If you want to convince me to accept you, you need to have a greater bargaining chip. Miranda did not say anything. The back and forth negotiations made her frown. And if you don't, then give up. Give up. Thales stared at her, but he clenched his fists tightly on the desk. Miranda. Please. Starlake Castle does not keep idle people, or are you willing to offer yourself as my pillow and warm my bed? Thales' tone was frivolous and exaggerated, full of sarcasm and disdain. Miranda did not say a word, but she clenched her fists tightly. Please, stay away from me. Thales looked at her quietly, and there was still a cold smile on his face. Stay away from Starlake Castle. Stay away from this quagmire, this whirlpool, and this trap. At least, I can avoid the eye of the storm in the future and protect myself. I can avoid becoming a victim of the alliance. Please.